Nestled in the remains of the ancient city of Tiwanaku, Bolivia, is the giant archaeological site called Pumapuchu. Archaeologists believe the site to be the cradle of civilization in South America, predating the Mayans. Evidence found in this region of Bolivia suggests Pumapuchu was a flourishing center for pre-Columbian culture as early as 600 AD. However, recent discoveries of monoliths as deep as 15 to 20 meters under the surface of a nearby lake establish that this civilization may date back as much as 12,000 years earlier. This calculation comes from archaeologist Hugo Barro Rojo, who determined that the depth of the structures indicates that this area of the lake was above water level at some time in the past. Sedimentary evidence places that time between 700 and 21,800 BC. Pumapuchu is one of the world's most mysterious ancient sites. This holds true for both academic archaeologists and historians, as well as rogue historians who investigate the hypothesis of advanced prehistoric civilizations or extraterrestrial assistance. The mystery lies in the precision and complexity of the structures that pervade the ruins. The finely cut doorways and remaining stone blocks bear no chisel marks and interlock with very fine precision. According to Jason Yeager, professor of anthropology at the University of Wisconsin, the city was already abandoned when the Incas conquered the area in 1470. The Incas spared no expense, incorporating Pumapuchu and the rest of the city into their empire and culture. Yeager said the Incas held the fallen stone portraits near Pumapuchu to be models of the first humans of their creation myth. These stone figures, however, are actually thought to depict the city's former rulers. Early explorer Arthur Polansky, one of the first modern explorers of the site, dated Pumapuchu to be about 15,000 BC. Modern archaeologist Neil Steed stands behind his claim. Bosnowski used the astronomical alignments of the site's main temple to date it. Steed said in an interview with Forbidden History they built the temple itself as a giant clock. On the first day of spring, the sun rises directly above the center of the temple through a stone archway. The sun moves along the horizon as the days of the year pass. Bosnowski expected to find the sunrise above cornerstones on either side of the temple in the summer and winter solstice, but found it rose some distance off. Believing archaeologist Dr. Oswald Rivera agrees the temple was built with astronomical alignments. The buildings are deliberately oriented to the cardinal points, but he said the builders made a mistake. That's why the sun doesn't rise over the cornerstones on the solstice. Steed disagrees, stating that the meticulous builders would not have made such an error. The stones fit together with such precision that he couldn't even wedge a needle between them. He said, after observing the perfection with which the site is built, to suggest that such things as the solstice markers are misaligned, I find incredible. Other features of the site include a complex irrigation system and smoothly drilled holes and channels in certain stone blocks that seem to defy the stonework of the Incas and all known pre-Inca peoples in the region. For this reason, some believe they may have had help from a more advanced civilization. But what do you think? How did the civilization build these structures with such precision? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. The Great Pyramid is a true masterpiece and has rightly earned the title of a wonder. It was built with such precision that our current technology cannot replicate it. There are many interesting facts about this pyramid that baffle archaeologists, scientists, farmers, and tourists alike. The pyramid is 756 feet long on each side, 481 feet high, and composed of 2,300,000 stones, each weighing nearly 3 tons, for a total mass of 6,500,000 tons. Legend has it that the structures were erected in just 20 years, meaning that a block had to be moved into place about every 5 minutes of each day and night. Such a pace would have required the labor of thousands. At the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, there are stone reliefs showing a large light bulb being used by Egyptians, also referred to as the Dendera light bulb. The description is similar to the early light bulb known as the Crookes tube. The released version of this light bulb shows a snake inside the glass bulb in the form of a wavy line. This is believed to represent the hot filament. Snakes have been used to symbolize godlike knowledge and wisdom and are often associated with representations of rocket ships and spacecraft that brought ancient aliens from the stars. Considering the lack of technological understanding of the primitive Egyptian craftsmen, it's understandable how they would consider a white-hot filament to be a magical snake. The filament originates from a lotus flower, and a white lead on the socket leads to a small box in which the Egyptian air god is kneeling. This god was tasked with cooling and maintaining the air. Next to the bulb stands a 2-ton pillar connected to the filament. This pillar is believed to be the power source for the light bulb and resembles an electrical capacitor used in modern power plants. It's hard to believe that the Egyptians possessed this technology. The presence of electrical lights would explain how the tomb hieroglyphs and inscriptions found under the Temple of Hathor were created without the use of burning torchlight. Torches were traditionally used to provide light to those creating reliefs and hieroglyphs found in many tombs and temples of Egypt. So how did they do their work in darkness? The use of light bulbs provides a plausible explanation. Some suggest that electric light is, in fact, the only plausible explanation for how light was generated without burning flames in the deep chambers under the Temple of Hathor. In fact, the discovery of the Baghdad Battery in Mesopotamia during the Persian Empire period, found near Baghdad, Iraq, in 1936, supports the idea that Egyptians could have powered the light bulb through the use of copper electrolytes and salts in a clay jar. In August 1993, 27-year-old Kelly Cahill, her husband, and 3 children were driving home after a visit to her friend's house. Their routine journey would soon become a trip they'd never forget. After midnight, the family was on their way home when they first noticed the lights of a rounded craft with windows around it. It suddenly hovered above the road and different colored lights were clearly visible at the bottom of the object. The UFO was so close to the ground that Kelly thought she could see people looking through the windows. As she began screaming to her husband about what she was seeing, the craft zoomed off to their left, disappearing as quickly as it made itself known. Continuing their drive home with an interest in the sky, they suddenly came upon a light that was so bright it practically blinded them. Shading her eyes from the intense lights with her hands, Kelly asked her husband, "What are you going to do?" Her husband, now threatened to reply, said, "I'm going to keep driving." Within what seemed only a second or two, Kelly was now very relaxed, suddenly overcome by the disappearance of the intense glowing light. The first words out of Kelly's mouth were, "What happened? Did I black out?" Her husband said nothing because he had no answer to give his wife. He cautiously drove his family home. Upon their safe arrival, Kelly noticed a foul odor, like vomit, and felt as though something was missing from their drive home. An hour or so had vanished from her and her family's life. That night, as Kelly undressed for bed, she noticed a strange dragon mark on her navel, a mark she had never seen before. Kelly suffered from illness for the next 2 weeks and was taken to the hospital on 2 occasions, one for severe stomach pain and the other for a urinary infection. Kelly would soon begin to remember details of that fearful night without any regressive hypnosis. She recalled the objects they had seen in a slightly different place than she first remembered. It was hovering in a gully and the UFO was big, with an estimated size of 150 feet in diameter. She could also recall that when the object was first spotted, her husband had stopped the car and both she and her husband had gotten out of the vehicle, watching the direction of the massive craft without fear. It was as if they were being subconsciously drawn to the craft. To their surprise, they noticed another car stopped on the side of the road. As they walked towards the craft, they saw a creature unlike anything they had ever seen before. It was black, and Kelly would later describe it as not having a soul. The black alien entity was taller than the average man, about 7 feet tall according to Kelly, and its eyes were large and glowing red. Kelly had a sense that the creatures were evil. She clung to her husband, fighting the feeling of blacking out. A great fear and dread caused her to scream at the alien-looking entities to leave them alone. The account of Kelly Cahill has been examined and re-examined by many researchers, and nothing has been proven or disproven. Kelly was considered a reliable and honest person by those who knew her at the time of this strange sighting. Her case is considered legitimate by many UFO investigators. The Bridgewater Triangle refers to an area of about 200 square miles within southeastern Massachusetts in the United States. The area has been the subject of numerous cryptozoological sightings. Since the 1970s, there have been several reports of tall, hairy ape-like creatures roaming the swamp. Numerous sightings of thunderbirds, giant pterosaur-like creatures, have also been reported, some even seen fighting in midair. In 1976, there was a report of a man who saw a giant red-eyed black dog. It's believed that these dogs may not actually be living, even though they appear real to the human eye. The area has a history rife with friction between settlers and the native people who lived there. Originally, the entire area belonged to the local Picasset tribe. However, over the years, much of this land was acquired from them. The 1659 purchase of Freetown, which was incorporated as a town in 1683, marked the beginning of this land acquisition. Over the years, more and more land was purchased from the tribe, often without proper consent from the tribe members by greedy chiefs. During the King Philip War, the Picasa tribe sided with the English and was rewarded with 190 acres of land in Fall River, Massachusetts, known as the Super Reservation at the time. However, in 1907, Fall River took 100 acres of the land to secure the city's drinking water supply. It wasn't until 1939 that the state of Massachusetts returned some of the taken land, leaving the tribe with the current Wampano Reservation covering 227 acres. Several reported sightings of a Bigfoot-like creature in the triangle, particularly near the Hockomock Swamp, have been documented. Joseph de Andre claimed to have seen a half-man and half-creature entering the woods near the swamp in 1978. Local resident John Baker reported seeing a large beast in a river in the swamp while canoeing. According to one tale, Native Americans abandoned the swamp centuries ago due to mistreatment by colonial settlers. The humanoid figures witnessed could be the grassman, a tall bipedal hominid that stalks woodland areas. Similar to Bigfoot, the grassman is reported to be more aggressive than other Sasquatch species and gets its name from the grass-like living structures it builds. So, what do you think? Is the Bridgewater Triangle really cursed? Share your theories in the comments. In the Venice Lagoon, between Venice and Knidos, lies the small island of Pollia. Inhabited since 421, when mainlanders sought refuge from invaders, Pollia's population began to dwindle over the centuries. By the 14th century, the island was completely abandoned. Like many small European islands during the plague outbreak in the 14th century, it became a quarantine colony with many locals sent there to die. Infected bodies were burned in giant pits, a grim reality that repeated in 1630 during the Black Death in Venice. The distance from the mainland meant that sufferers would be out of sight and mind, safely away from those yet to contract the plague. Giant graves, or plague pits, can still be found all over the island where people were dumped after death to prevent the disease's spread. Despite its small and easily missed location, Napoleon also used the island for a darker purpose, storing weapons, leading to small battles and more lives lost. During the 1800s, the site was supposedly used as a mental asylum, although some sources dispute this claim. Stories persist of ill treatment and experimental procedures being carried out. In the 1930s, a doctor believed to have gone crazy jumped from the bell tower. From the mid-20th century until its closure in 1975, Pollia Hospital served as a geriatric center. Today, the entire island is abandoned and many locals fear setting foot on it, believing it to be cursed. Fishermen also refuse to fish in the area, fearing they may drag up human remains. The ghosts of patients and victims haunt the island's buildings, with voices and screams often heard. Electronic voice phenomena (EVPs) are frequently captured, and dark, fleeting shadows are commonly witnessed, along with reported possessions. In 2016, 5 people from Colorado were rescued by Italian firefighters after spending the night on the island. They experienced a haunting presence, screaming for help as darkness fell. A passing sailboat overheard their cries, alerting Italian authorities who came to their rescue. The Devil's Tramping Ground is a camping spot situated in a forest in Bear Creek, North Carolina, and has been the subject of many local legends and stories. These legends frequently allege that the devil tramps and haunts a circle of ground in which nothing is supposed to grow. Strangely, any vegetation planted in this area will wither and die, and it also seems to affect animals. Dogs become frightened, tucking their tails between their legs and whimpering when brought near. Animals, scared by the environment, dig their heels into the sand, refusing to be brought into the circle. Stories abound of people attempting to spend the night here, but it's reported that no one has been able to stay for more than a few hours. Those who venture too close to the area report headaches, pains, and aches. According to the legend, in this tramping ground, the devil spends his nights pacing around in a circle, contemplating ways to bring human souls to hell. The scorching heat of his cloven footprints is said to kill the vegetation and render the soil barren. The devil, in his enraged state, brushes aside anything left in his path, effortlessly tossing even the heaviest objects. When the devil walks in this private spot on earth, he drops the illusions with which he disguises himself when appearing to men. In its natural state, the face of this fallen angel is described as so horrible that no man can see it and remain sane. Rich Hayes, a soil scientist, attempted to find a non-devil-related reason for the lack of plant growth in the area. He compared soil from inside the circle to soil from outside, focusing on salt and copper content as large amounts of these substances can kill plants. Inside the circle, he found elevated readings of sodium, copper, zinc, and pH levels compared to the soil from the woods a few yards away. At certain points in the circle, a compass will skew by about degrees, a phenomenon usually associated with soils high in iron content, which the soil does not have. Despite the mysteries, Hayes proposed that the ashes and charred logs at the center of the circle could impact vegetation capabilities. However, even with this explanation, the legend of the Devil's Tramping Ground persists. The Phantom of Klinggra Grange is one of the best-known vampire stories in Britain. Legends tell that Klinggra Grange was in the hands of the Fisher family for many centuries. In the early 19th century, the Fishers moved from the property into larger dwellings and put the property up for let. During the long cold winter, the house was empty. As the winter passed into spring, the grain was finally led to two brothers and a sister called the Crown Whales. It seems they enjoyed life to the fore and soon settled into village routine and socialized with the local people. They were well-liked within the village and loved their new home very much. One summer's evening, Miss Cranswell looked out the window in the direction of the darkened churchyard at the bottom of their lawn and noticed something peculiar in the vicinity of the churchyard. It seemed above the darkened blackness of the gravestone she could see 2 points of light moving. In time, they moved from the graveyard over the shadows of the wall, moving closer to the bottom of the garden where they played around the churchyard wall. But this time, Miss Crance's curiosity had given way to a deep feeling of unease. She shut the window tight, bolted the door, and made down in her bed to try and get some sleep. On the verge of sleep, she was suddenly jolted awake by the low rusting from outside the window. She twisted in bed and sat upright. Outside the window were 2 points of light, which she recognized as the vampire's eyes. He stepped to the bed and in one movement grabbed her hair with his hands. He then poured her head back as if to deliver a kiss. The brothers, sleeping in separate rooms, were aroused and put out a loud-pitched scream that seemed to shake the very walls of the grange. In a moment, they were before their sister's door. The door was locked, so they smashed through it, breaking into the devastating scene. There was a stench of moldy decay in the air, and upon the bed lay their sister, blood pumping from gashes in her neck. One of the brothers rushed to the open window and just caught sight of a shadow flittering across the bottom of their garden near the churchyard. They managed to stop the blood flow and revive Miss Cranswell. The next few hours were spent in an attempt to save her life. Miss Crantrose survived the attack, and when she was strong enough to travel, they took her to Switzerland to recuperate in fresh mountain air. When the false story was in the open, the brothers swore revenge on the creature. So it came to be that the Crown's Rails returned to Grogden one dark winter's day. Miss Cranswell took a place in the room overlooking the churchyard, and as the moon rose, a pair of bright lights shone in the windows of the churchyard. Once more, the figure of a man appeared at the window and picked the leaded glass to gain entry to the bedchamber. This time, the two brothers were lying in wait in the shadows. As the figure came to step into the room, they both released shots at the creature. There was a low howl, and the creature sped off in the direction from which it came. Not wishing to follow such a creature into his domain, the two brothers waited for daybreak. First thing in the morning, they took Miss Cranswell to safety and gathered all the residents of the grain around them to carry out the Grisham task. The men searched the graveyard for any signs of disturbance. On finding none, they turned their attention to the church. All was quiet, but they noticed that the crypt door was slightly ajar. Pushing into the crypt, they were met with a chilling scene. All around the crypt were the scattered remains of broken coffins and human bones. One coffin stood alone in the corner and seemed to have been untouched by the chaos. The villagers wrenched off the coffin lid. Inside, wrapped in moldy clothes, was what they assumed to be a vampire. Its eyes were cold and lifeless in the daylight, but a fresh pistol wound was gaping from one of the creature's banks. The villagers dragged the coffin and its demonic contents out into the churchyard and burned it to ashes. Nobody seemed to know where the strange creature came from or what remained dormant in the centuries of peace when the Fishers lived in the property. One can only surmise that during the period of dereliction, an age-old horror was reawakened and would not return to rest after the house was reoccupied. Sheep squash, also known as the White Thing, is a woody head cryptid reported across numerous counties in West Virginia, predominantly within the southwestern region of the state. It's described as being a quadruped about the size of a bear with entirely white wool-like fur. It has a long pointed head similar to a dog with long sable-like teeth and a single set of horns dissimilar from those found on a young goat. Its paws end in pads similar to those of a raccoon but larger, while its tail is long and hairless like that of a possum. It's reputed to smell like sulfur, which has been attributed through folklore to the beast being born within the TNT area in Mason County, akin to one of the Mothman theories. In 1994, a former Navy seaman stated having witnessed the beast breaking through the forest after ingesting amounts of shroom caps he found on the forest floor. The white thing breached the brush line and knelt to drink from the creek. After drinking for a few minutes, it crossed the creek and continued towards the nearby road. The witness observed the animal for a while before it moved into the surrounding brush. Within the same year, 2 children observed the creature while playing in their yard in Boone County. What they reported seeing looked like a large white bear, yet in this case, it stood up on its hind legs, making it over 6 feet tall. Startled by the children, the beast ran through the forest, breaking medium-sized branches in its path. The creature was spotted again a year later, this time involving a car. A couple driving through Boone County observed a large white beast sitting in the ditch alongside the roadway. As many curious passers-by might do in such a situation, they stopped their car to get a better look. They described the creature mostly similar to early descriptions, but they added that the creature had 4 eyes. In stark contrast, the last sighting involved sheep squatch fleeing the scene. The creature leaped out of the ditch and started to attack the car. Frightened by the attack, the couple drove off quickly and noticed large scratches on the side where they'd been sub-attacked. Another incident in 1999 involved a couple of campers who were in the forest at night, again in Boone County. Their encounter occurred around a bonfire where they eventually heard an animal snorting and scuffing around the camp in a manner similar to an aggravated bear. However, it did not come into the light of the campfire immediately. Suddenly, the sheep squatch charged out of the darkness at the campers. Reacting quickly, they jumped up and ran back to their house, all while being pursued by the sheep squatch. The white creature stopped at the edge of the forest where they crossed it and let out a terrible scream before turning around and heading back into the woods. The next morning, the campers returned to their campsite and their trail home, finding it torn up. In Fox Run, Virginia, the beast was spotted once again. 6 campers reported seeing the creature close to midnight. The beast was reported to be 8 to 9 feet tall with a shoulder length of 4 to 5 feet. One of the campers first saw the beast at the top of a nearby hill in a crouching position. Then it stood up and he alerted the other campers. The creature started running down the steep hill towards the campers, but they were separated by a river flowing through. They looked on as it searched for a way to cross and, with no other option, began to wade through the river. It finally emerged from the water, and the campers reported that it appeared like a bipedal dog in the chest with its fur wet from the river crossing. Then a loud screech was heard about 2 miles off from where they were. The campers quickly packed and left, reporting it to the locals, fearing that if the authorities were informed, they would be ridiculed. The identity of the campers is unknown as of March 2016. Homo sapiens is part of a group called hominids, which were the earliest human-like creatures. Based on archaeological and anthropological evidence, hominids are believed to have evolved from other primates somewhere between 2.5 and 4 million years ago in eastern and southern Africa. Despite a degree of diversity among the hominid family, they all share the trait of bipedalism, or the ability to walk upright on 2 legs. However, there are dissenting opinions on this theory. Many individuals reject mainstream history, believing it to be inaccurate. One example is the alleged 100-million-year-old fossilized finger, an artifact deemed impossible by mainstream scientists. In the last 50 years, new information has emerged suggesting that mankind inhabited the planet much earlier than conventional science asserts. Footprints in Africa indicate that different species inhabited Earth around 200 million years ago, implying various stages of development dominated by different species. Many proponents of alternative history argue that our planet has undergone different developmental stages, each influencing the development of civilization and society. Evidence supporting this unknown history is found worldwide. According to mainstream archaeology and anthropology, the oldest human fossil is around 2,800,000 years old. However, numerous discoveries challenge this conventional thinking. One such groundbreaking discovery is a fossilized human finger believed to be 100 million years old. Unearthed in the 1980s at a quarry in Texas, this incredible find challenges established scientific patterns. Paleontologists argue that for soft tissues to fossilize in this manner, the finger must have been rapidly placed in an oxygen-free environment. The fossilized finger, segmented and studied by scientists, revealed distinctive inner structures arranged in concentric circles. Further analysis identified what appear to be bones, joints, and tendons preserved inside the finger. Although experts cannot determine the species to which the finger belongs, it is deemed unlikely to be from a primate. This discovery raises intriguing questions. How is it possible that a 100-million-year-old fossilized finger exists? Did an unknown human species inhabit Earth 100 million years ago? Could the so-called out-of-place artifacts truly be more in place than previously thought? This photo was captured from the Sunnerstein episode of the Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures. It was taken by tourists. The team from Ghost Adventures was chatting with Cal Cogan, who produced this photograph apparently showing the ghost of Andrew Ranton, a ruthless English pirate taken by a visitor. In these ghost photographs, the figure on the left, who was not seen by anyone else at the time, is wearing a ruffled collar resembling the period that Ransom was in St. Augustine. This was around the late 16th century. His apparition has been seen numerous times around the Castillo area by both locals and tourists. Some have gone as far as saying they physically felt his presence, including mysterious voices, unexplained footsteps, and cold spots. On the morning of September 16, 1994, teachers and school officials at the aerial school in Rouse, Zimbabwe, were amazed when the school students, aged approximately 5 to 12 years old, reported that a flying object had landed on the school grounds. The teachers were in a meeting, leaving the 62 children unsupervised during morning recess. The only available adult appeared to be one of the mothers operating the school tuck shop, a sort of snack bar where candy, snacks, and sodas are sold. According to some sources, UFOs had been seen in the skies of Zimbabwe for 2 days before the incident occurred. Ra is around 20 kilometers from the capital of Zimbabwe, and Aerial School is a private elementary school. The children stated that they had first seen 3 objects in the sky which would disappear and then reappear in different locations. The objects moved closer and closer to the ground, finally landing in a brushy area adjacent to the schoolyard, an area off-limits to the students. The object landed or hovered just above the ground, about 100 meters from the students. The children reported that a small man, about 1 meter in height, appeared on top of the object. The little man, described as having a scrawny neck, black hair, and huge eyes, walked a short way across the ground towards the students. When he noticed the children, he vanished and then reappeared at the back of the object. The objects then took off and disappeared. The smaller children were very frightened and cried for help, believing that the little man was a demon who would eat them. African children have heard legends of Tokolosis, demons who come for children. The children ran to the tuck shop operator, but she did not want to leave the shop unattended. The late Cynthia Hine, known as Africa's former USO phone investigator, investigated the case the next day. When she was first contacted, she asked the headmaster of the school, Colin Mackey, to have the children draw pictures of what they saw. Upon arrival at the school, he had around 35 drawings for her, all depicting very similar objects. The headmaster affirmed that he believed the students were telling the truth, and one girl said, "I swear by every hair on my head and the whole Bible that I'm telling the truth." Dr. John Mack, the abduction researcher, then went to Raw and spent 2 days interviewing and counseling 12 of the children and their parents. The oldest student claimed they felt that the creatures were somehow communicating with them, sending the message that humans are destroying the planet and polluting the environment in ways that will have dark consequences. One person said those thoughts came from the man's eyes. The Sightings TV show did a report on the aerial school landing, and video footage exists of actual testimony from the children. So my question to you is, what do you think these children saw? Let me know your theories in the comments. Kawak is a cryptid native to the Indonesian island of Nusa It's reported as a reptilian creature whose petal and stance are known to attack humans. Locals identify Kawak as vicious corpse eaters. The creature is described as having the shape of a monitor lizard, being carnivorous, and having 4 limbs. Its sense of smell is powerful, similar to the Komodo dragon. The key difference is that Kawak extends its attacks widely upon humans on sight, often exhibiting pack hunting traits, especially in darkness. Due to this, locals on the island refrain from storing food in their homes. As reported by Madarka News in 2014, Harry, a fisherman and guard on the island, witnessed the creature with his friends, noting that a pack of Kawak was tracking them. Such reported sightings are rare due to limited media coverage and controlled movement by authorities on the isolated island. With only around 3,000 residents, Nusa is sparsely populated and is sometimes referred to as the Indonesian Alcatraz because it houses one of the country's most guarded prisons. Escaping from the prison could mean certain death due to the island's dense jungle and the presence of various wild animals. The government has maintained the island as a natural reserve and electricity is scarce, with generators turned on when night falls. Village residents typically stay indoors at night, and if someone ventures out carrying a traditional machete for self-defense is considered normal. The creature's identity is a subject of speculation, with most people thinking that Kawak is likely a Komodo dragon. These reptiles, known for their danger to humans, have an average size of 8 to 9 feet and around 200 pounds, but they can reach up to 11 feet in length. Komodo dragons are carnivorous and fierce hunters capable of consuming large prey, including water buffalo, deer, pigs, and even humans. They use an ambush strategy, waiting for unsuspecting animals to pass by before springing into action with a venomous bite. While some suggest that the island natives are aware of Komodo dragons, inquiries about Kawak often elicit descriptions of a dinosaur-like creature. This is the original legend of how the mummy of Opit Island was discovered. It shouldn't be taken as absolute fact, as many elements of the story have been debated for the past century. In 1795, at the age of 16, Daniel McGuinness embarked on a fishing expedition to Oak Island. On the island, he found himself standing in a clearing in front of an old oak tree bearing marks of unnatural scarring, supposedly caused by a rope and tackle system used to lower material into a shaft below, indicated by a depression beneath the tree about 4.8 meters in diameter. Recognizing the scene from childhood tales, Daniel returned the next day with 2 friends, equipped with picks and shovels, to recover the treasure. However, the task required more digging equipment than they anticipated. As the 3 boys dug, they found the earth-bearing marks on its smooth clay sides. Excitement rose when, at a depth of 1.2 meters, they hit a layer of flagstones. Removing these revealed patch logs at 3 meters, 6 meters, and 9-meter intervals. Realizing they needed more substantial tools, they reluctantly returned to the mainland, planning to come back later to recover the treasure. 9 years later, Daniel and his friends returned to Oak Island, finding the treasure site untouched. With the support of a local businessman and backing from the local labor force, the treasure evacuation began. More platforms were discovered at depths of 12 meters, 15 meters, and 18 meters, along with coconut fiber and putty. At 21.3 meters, they hit a platform of plain oak, followed by more oak sealed with putty at 24.4 meters. At 27 meters, a stone not native to Nova Scotia was recovered, bearing an inscription that suggested a hoard of pirate treasure. As the treasure seekers dug deeper, they uncovered more platforms, but their expectations of finding vast treasures were challenged. Nightfall and poor visibility, coupled with increasing water problems, led to the abandonment of digging until daylight. The group returned on Monday to find the shaft flooded with seawater, halting excavation attempts. Despite efforts to pump and burn out water, the pit consistently contained water at a level of 10 meters from the top. Facing an impossible situation, the project was abandoned for a year, and workers returned to their farms, planning to resume the search in the spring. A separate treasure shaft was proposed to divert floodwater, but at a depth of 33 meters, tunneling into the original shaft proved futile. The diggers narrowly escaped as the walls of the new shaft collapsed, leaving the original shaft flooded up to a level of 10 meters below the surface again. Smith, feeling defeated by nature, gave up on the treasure, a sentiment echoed by many in the future, even with the use of metal detectors and radar. The Solar and Heliospheric Observatory is a satellite jointly operated by NASA and the European Space Agency, dedicated to observing the Sun's activity. Operational for over 20 years, it has made significant discoveries about the Sun's workings, including complicated gas currents below the Sun's visible surface and frequent changes in magnetic fields, according to the European Space Agency, ESA. In June 1998, less than 3 years after launch, researchers faced a challenge when the satellite was in the wrong position for communication and unresponsive to commands. Originally designed to study the internal structure of the Sun, its extensive outer atmosphere, and the origin of the solar wind, the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory has also observed anomalies over the years. A YouTube UFO channel, 174, claims that various types of UFOs are orbiting the Sun. Enthusiasts believe that some images captured by the observatory depict genuine UFOs hovering around the sun, with some speculating that these crafts use the sun for refueling. A notable concern is the size of these alleged craft, with some being described as large as the moon or even larger. Questions arise regarding how these objects, if alien in nature, withstand the extreme temperature of the sun. The core of the sun reaches temperatures exceeding 27 million degrees Fahrenheit due to gravitational attraction and nuclear fusion, a process where hydrogen atoms compress and fuse, producing helium and immense energy. This energy radiates outward through various zones of the sun, from the core to the radiative and connective zones, eventually reaching the photosphere where visible light is detected. Most scientists attribute sightings of UFOs and other shapes around the sun to the release of electrons, ions, and atoms during flares and mass ejections that often occur. The term unidentified flying object (UFO) is commonly used to describe any airborne phenomenon whose origin cannot be easily or immediately identified. Both military and civilian research indicates that a significant majority of UFO sightings are later identified upon further investigation. Typically, these sightings often turn out to be stars, planets, advertising planes, optical illusions, or hoaxes. Skeptics suggest that the remaining reports could likely be explained with additional information. Over the last 30 years, the triangle shape has gained prominence in discussions, often reported as flying low, running silently, and displaying several lights on the bottom. Sightings of these triangular objects are sometimes reported in waves and are described as having the ability to transition from a slow crawl to a high-speed departure in a matter of seconds. Some speculate that these triangle UFOs could be top-secret government craft, potentially in the experimental stage and designed with military implications, especially related to stealth capabilities. Researcher and author Clyde Lewis notes that triangle UFO sightings in the UK are almost a daily occurrence, with approximately 4,000 reports since 1990. Similar sightings have been reported in Belgium, France, Holland, and Germany. For example, on March 30, 1993, multiple witnesses across southwest and West England observed a large black triangle moving at low speeds. The Canachet UFO wave, starting in December 2016, involved multiple groups of witnesses documenting events on February 17, where dark triangular objects with blinking white and red lights were observed. Similar sightings occurred on January 19, 2017, with an object described as dark on the bottom with lights and silvery on top. The Phoenix Lights, observed on March 13, 1997, over Arizona, Nevada, and Sonora, Mexico, involved two distinct events: a triangular formation of lights passing over the state and a series of stationary lights seen in the Phoenix area. The United States Air Force attributed the second set of lights to flares dropped during training exercises, but some questioned this explanation due to the extended duration of the sighting, over 3 hours compared to the burn time of flares, around 5 minutes. The governor at the time, who was a witness to the incident, later described the object as otherworldly. Could this enormous object serve as evidence of an underwater pyramid? The structure, estimated to be between 3 and 10 miles across, was identified on Google Earth in the Pacific Ocean. A video about this discovery, uploaded to YouTube, has sparked extensive speculation about its nature, with suggestions ranging from an ancient sunken city to a peculiar UFO or even an alien base. The discovery was made by Argentina resident Barcelona Augusta, who, using Google Earth, claims to have found a giant pyramid near Mexico. Augusta asserts that he stumbled upon the underwater structure after noticing a bright beam within the darkness of the Pacific Ocean. This beam led him to what he believed to be an enormous pyramid. Some UFO enthusiasts support the theory, suggesting that the pyramid, located at the provided coordinates, might be around 11 miles wide at most. Given its proximity to Mexico, some have drawn parallels between the underwater mystery and the Aztec and Mayan pyramids. There are assertions that no human could have constructed such a structure. Additionally, some speculate that it could be linked to the mythical Atlantis, the lost city that continues to capture the imagination of millions. Plato's texts describe Atlantis as emerging from the Atlantic Ocean, with an island situated in front of the stretch known as the Pillars of Heracles, now recognized as the Straits of Gibraltar. While many envision a lush green island surrounded by deep blue waters, Plato's account depicts Atlantis as an empire ruled from this island. Scholars have debated whether Atlantis is a myth or based on a real historical disaster, and various theories exist about its potential location. The photo raises numerous questions about the nature of the underwater structure. What do you think this photo reveals? Share your theories in the comments. The Lake Ontario serpent, a Canadian sea monster, has been the subject of numerous sightings, local legends, children's stories, settler tales, and modern accounts. The consistent theme across these sightings is a description of a long, serpent-like creature. The creature is also known by alternative names, including the Metrosaurus and King's Tai, derived from Kingston on the east side of Lake Ontario. There is speculation that similar creatures might inhabit most of the Great Lakes, given sightings of long, eel-like monsters and the interconnected nature of these lakes. Dating back to historical accounts, on July 3, 1817, the crew of a ship reported witnessing a blackish, snake-like monster 3 miles offshore. In 1829, 2 children claimed to have seen a 20 to 30-foot-long snake-like creature, with their account published in the local newspaper. Various sightings continued, including one in 1842 where 2 boys reported a 30 to 40-foot creature with a large head swimming off the shore of Gold Beach. On August 22, 1882, witnesses near Fort York described a serpent as being 50 feet long, as wide as a man, bluish-gray, and covered in stiff bristles. The account was published in the Toronto Mail and later republished in the New York Times. In 1877, a creature was spotted in Burlington Bay resembling a log with a crocodile-like mouth, and a fisherman claimed the monster had snapped off his door. In September 1881, passengers and the crew of the steamship Sea glimpsed a huge creature described as being 25 to 40 feet with small legs and a large tail. In July 1892, a couple fishing near Brackage Bay reported being attacked by a monster, which they fended off with a fishing pole. The creature was described as a huge serpent with eyes resembling water fire. During the 1970s, an employee of the Ministry of Natural Resources reported sighting the creature twice, describing a large creature diving into the lake from the shores of Prince Edward County. The Lake Ontario serpent remains a mysterious and intriguing part of local folklore. In Massachusetts, on the night of January 25, 1967, one of the most celebrated cases of UFO abductions began. Betty Anderson was in the kitchen while her 7 children, mother, and father were in the living room. Shortly after 6:30, the lights in the house briefly blinked. Immediately after, a reddish light began to beam through the kitchen window. The sudden darkness in the house set the kids' nerves on edge, and Betty ran to comfort them. Her father ran into the kitchen to peer out the window and find the source of the unusual light. To his utter shock, he saw odd-looking beings coming towards the house with a hopping motion. Before he could regain his composure, he saw the beings walk right through the wooden door. The entire family was suddenly put into a state of suspended animation. One of the creatures went to Betty's father while one of the other 4 began to make telepathic communication with Betty. One of the groups seemed to be a leader of sorts. He was about 5 feet tall. The other 4 appeared to be about a foot shorter. All of the beings had a pear-shaped head with wide eyes and small ears and noses. Their mouths were only slits and never moved, but they were able to communicate through their minds. The beings wore a top of coverall blue in color with a white belt. There was also a logo of a bird on their sleeves. The hands only had 3 fingers and they wore boots. The creatures did not move like a human but floated as they went. Betty would later relate that, though she was frightened, she felt a sense of calm, even friendship towards the beings. The aliens were holding Betty's children in a frozen state of consciousness, but when Betty showed concern for them, the aliens released her 11-year-old daughter to assure her the children were not being harmed. Betty was taken by the aliens outside to a waiting craft which rested on the side of a sloping bank. The craft was estimated to be 20 feet in diameter in the classic UFO shape. Betty believes that after she was aboard the ship, it joined a mother craft where she underwent a physical examination and also was subjected to the side effects of strange equipment. After this, she was given a type of bizarre test which caused her pain at first but resulted in a kind of religious experience. Approximately 4 hours later, she was returned to her home by her 2 captors. When she arrived, her entire family was still in a state of suspended animation. One of the beings had stayed in her house to watch over the other family members. After releasing the family from their trance-like state, the aliens left. Betsy would later state that the aliens had hypnotized her not to recall any of her experience until a designated time. She was able to recall only certain things at the time of her experience: the power outage, the red light through the window, and the aliens entering the house. Before this bizarre happening, Betty had little or no knowledge of UFO folklore, and being a devoted Christian, she believed the abduction had a religious meaning. It would be later until she began to view the abduction as alien in nature. Betty answered an ad from Dr. Alan Hynek, who was listing abduction experiences from the general public. Her letter was dismissed at first because of its unusual details, and it would be January 19, 1977, before her story would be fully investigated. The investigator team assigned to the Anderson case included a solar physicist and electronics engineer, an aerospace engineer, a telecommunications specialist, and a UFO investigator. The service of a medical doctor trained in psychiatry was also used. Betty's case involved 12 months of investigation. She was given a character reference check, a lie detector test, a psychiatric review, and an excruciating 14 sessions of aggressive hypnosis. The results of this inquiry were startling. Betty, along with her daughter, relived a detailed account of a UFO experience agreeing on all basic aspects. The results were published in the 528-page account, which stated that Betty and her daughter were sane individuals who sincerely believed all of the details given in their statements. The Betty Anderson abduction case is still being investigated today. The origins of the Tennessee wild man go way back to the 1800s in Tennessee. One of the stories suggests that a circus show somehow captured the beast and put him on display in a case where everyone could see him for exploitation until it finally broke free. The description of the Tennessee wild man is similar in appearance to the Sasquatch but more human. He supposedly has either dark gray or ginger hair, is about 7 feet tall, and is always accompanied by piercing red eyes. Known to spout out a disturbing war cry that can frighten anyone who hears it, the creature also has a horrible smell familiar to the skunk ape. It exhibits very aggressive behavior and could possibly be the archenemy of the Sasquatch. Not surprisingly, the wild man possesses great strength, agility, and speed. Many groups of men have gone out hunting for the creature, and usually they don't find anything or something traumatizing happens. The monster is known to have a strange targeting obsession with dogs and women. Many women have come forward, claiming the wild man attempted to snatch them up and carry them away, although these attempts are suspected to have been always unsuccessful. The latest known wild man sighting took place about 20 years ago near Tennessee. Rob Phillips, along with his cousin, were on a night hike to the cliffs. Through the rain, they noticed something strange in the forest. Everything had become silent. The sound of a snapping twig broke the silence, followed by a horrible, inhuman scream unlike anything the hikers had ever heard. The men fled separately through the darkened wood, with Philip soon finding safety behind a tree. It wasn't long after that he spotted the wild man clinging to a nearby tree around 15 feet away from Rob. Rob had his cousin break through the hill, and he followed Philip's account, corresponding with the initial tales of the Tennessee wild man described as about 9 feet tall, with red eyes, a set of claws, and a horrible stink that Phillips compared to the scent of a dead animal. It's unlikely the Tennessee wild man has lived almost 150 years in the Tennessee mountains. It may be assumed that more than one of these creatures exists, or could the creature sighting in the Beecliffs area be something else entirely? Resurrection Cemetery is one of the most famous haunted locations in the United States. Unusual and unexplainable phenomena have been reported here as far back as January 1979, with over 152,000 graves, not counting the 5,300 crypts in the mausoleum. It's truly a mammoth burial ground. Area residents have nicknamed it the Resurrection Triangle due to all the strange events that have taken place here throughout the years. Resurrection was consecrated in 1904 and officially opened in 1912. Several motorists have reported picking up a hitchhiker only to have the hitchhiker disappear minutes later, almost as if the hitchhiker was a ghost. Richard Crow, a local historian in January 1979, believed the hitchhiker was not a human but a ghost. He said the following: "I think that of all the ghost stories worth believing in, Resurrection Mary is the one with the best documentation. The witnesses that I found are remarkably level-headed, and they're primarily middle-class types who have steady jobs and no other major claims to psychic encounters in their lives." The first case was in 1939 when a Chicago cab driver, Jerry Pallas, stopped to pick up a female passenger at the front gates of the cemetery. Captivated by the beautiful blonde woman, he immediately asked her out on a date to the local dance hall. He learned her name was Mary and she lived on the south side of town. When it was time to leave, he offered her a ride home, but she instead asked him to drop her off at the cemetery on Archer Road. When she arrived there, she stepped out of his car and vanished before his eyes. Perplexed, he was determined to know more about this mysterious woman. Pallas drove to the house where the mysterious woman said she lived and was greeted by a mother who looked surprised to see a stranger on her doorstep in the dead of night. He inquired about the mystery woman he danced with just hours before, and it was then that he received the terrible news. Her mother told him her daughter's name was Mary and she died 5 years earlier. He then understood why she was ice-cold to the touch. Another incident involved 2 officers who patrolled the area near the cemetery. One night, the officers noticed a figure inside the gates of the cemetery and thought someone had accidentally been locked inside. They called the cemetery caretaker, Nibiru, for a brief moment but returned to find no figure inside the gate or anywhere in the area. At the gate where she stood just minutes earlier, there were imprints of 2 small hands. People are still witnessing Mary to this day. The Quinbe were a pre-Columbian culture living in South America from 300 to 1550 CE, well known for their incredible skills in very precise golden metalwork. Among the figurines discovered, some models resemble what some believe could be flying machines. The Quinbe airplanes are golden artifacts found in Colombia and made by the Quinbe civilization. What makes these airplane models so amazing is that they are aerodynamically accurate. In 1994, German aeronautical engineers Peter Belting and Comrade Lovers created larger-scale radio-controlled models of these artifacts. They proved the design's flow with single propeller power and jet power. The astonishing reality of these artifacts sets in when one considers that mechanical flight had not been invented until 1903. How then could the pre-Columbians of 1000 BC understand the advanced concepts of aerodynamic design? Modern researchers have mixed beliefs about the Quinbe civilization and their presumed knowledge of flight based on gold artifacts. There are arguments regarding this theory due to the lack of building materials necessary to make flying machines hundreds of years ago, along with the absence of modern engines and the fact that landing strips of the Golden Flyers have not been discovered. It's entirely possible for artifacts to be moved around from place to place in the ancient world, especially if they fell victim to more dominant people or if cultures migrated for survival over time. The artifacts do exist, and they might help clarify another interesting ancient phenomenon not too far from where the Quinbe once lived. Certain parts of the Nazca lines are believed by some researchers to resemble ancient runways. Quinbe golden works were roughly buried with the dead as tokens necessary for prosperity in the afterlife. Examining the cache of available artifacts, it becomes evident that Quinbe created works based on interpretations of real objects and people. The golden airplanes could be evidence of an ancient culture's knowledge of flight well before modern times, or they could represent an extinct species of insects. There is also an alternative concept to consider with artifacts such as the Golden Flyer, be it through cultural influence from an outside civilization. Today, we find an intriguing phenomenon which takes place after remote cultures are visited for the first time. Modern isolated tribes visited in both Africa and South America by airplanes have demonstrated shifts in religious beliefs after the visit. One of the tribes welcomed the plane on its second visit with ceremonial fire and statues constructed in the shape of airplanes. Tribe members even went so far as to line themselves along a runway path to greet the visitors. If remote cultures exhibit this sort of behavior during the world's technological era, then it's likely the same concept played out before. From this angle, thinking theories suggest that Quinbe may have been influenced by another culture or perhaps some sort of alien civilization. Nibiru believers are convinced that the rogue system is making its way from the outer solar system inwards, where it will wreak havoc on Earth as it passes at about 4 million miles away. They claim the planet will cause the poles to switch, sparking great earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. However, a series of false arrival dates have come and gone, with conspiracy theorists claiming it will be later this year. Now, photos and videos have surfaced online that some claim could show the mythical planetary system appearing behind the sun. In the clip, the narrator explains how he used a drone fitted with a polarized lens to uncover the phenomenon. The camera pans around and we see the sun glowing bright in the distance. But as the filter darkens, 2 objects appear alongside, with the man claiming one of them is apparently Nibiru and it's getting closer alongside another planet from the legendary mini-star system. Many don't believe the planet exists and state it's just another conspiracy theory. Predictions have been made for when this planet is meant to collide with Earth, but it never seems to happen. NASA has also commented on the planet, stating that Nibiru and other stories about wayward planets are an internet hoax. There is no factual basis for these claims. If Nibiru or Planet X were real and headed for an encounter with Earth in 2012, astronomers would have been tracking it for at least the past decade, and it would have been visible by now to the naked eye. Obviously, it does not exist. Eris is real, but it's a dwarf planet similar to Pluto that remains in the outer solar system. The closest it can come to Earth is about 4 billion miles. Once again, theories claim this planet will show itself later this year. But what do you guys think? Is Planet X real or just another conspiracy theory? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Aliens, government conspiracies, meteorites, missile explosions, or even a prank, these are some of the ideas buzzing around the discovery of a giant crater in Russia. The first crater lies on the northern tip of the Yamal Peninsula, where the term Yaleo means end of the world in the local language. It was an unstable place to explore or even approach too closely, with its rims melting and falling inside to the sound of water running deep within. The marshy state of the hole meant scientists had to wait until winter, when the crater had frozen solid, to determine what was inside. The second crater in Yamal was assumed to have formed in September 2013, with witnesses confident it was a meteorite. There were no witnesses to the formation of the third crater, which was found by Shepard, who nearly fell inside. The first Euron crater was initially inspected by helicopter, and soil, water, and air samples were taken near the opening of the surface. There were various explanations thrown around regarding how these massive holes came to be, from meteorite impacts to weapons testing to aliens taking soil samples. Investigations found that these holes were not man-made and were not consistent with meteorite impact. The most logical explanation relied on the fact that these craters formed near large methane reserves, a reason exacerbated by climate change in the past few years, which have been the warmest in 120,000 years. It's possible that a pocket of gas in the soil became heated and started building pressure. With the ground thawed more than usual, the gas was able to push through the surface, popping like a phenomenon known as a pingo. Once the researchers have a better understanding of the crater's composition and a model for how it formed, they plan to investigate more recent craters. They then plan to examine satellite data from the last 30 years in hopes of finding similar structures to study. People are also finding deep holes in Russian forests. These holes appear in the dense forest with no easy access for a car, truck, heavy digging equipment, or even people. Plus, there's no soil nearby, suggesting to some that the hole wasn't dug. When people are brave enough to venture into the holes, they find they end abruptly in darkness. There are no reasonable ideas on how these holes appear and what they are being used for. No one knows who or what is digging these holes or why. It's not always archaeologists who make the greatest discoveries. Sometimes it's regular people going about their business who stumble upon incredible finds. Reddit user Tramping found a homemade wooden box in a dumpster. On the face of things, the box didn't look very unusual. It had hinges, a handle, and a pair of locks. But that changed when he opened it and discovered stacks of papers featuring diary entries about flying saucer visits in the late 1960s to 1980, along with other interesting stuff like drawings of biblical regions. That's pretty odd, but things get odder, and this is why the box was called the Box of Crazy. Inside, he discovered sketches of UFOs and heavenly four-headed entities appearing to be from the biblical book of Ezekiel, along with creatures with wings and others that blended the divine and extraterrestrial. However, the contents of the box didn't just stop at aliens, because Tramping found some fantastic drawings of train wheels and hand-drawn maps from the late 1930s, all marked with a pinhole in the center. When these mind-blowing sketches, writings, and maps were shown on Reddit, the internet immediately started asking questions. Why were they placed in a box and shoved in a dumpster? Did the artist witness another dimension? Or are they just the ramblings and rantings of an open-minded person? One strange aspect is that the drawings are definitely not amateur. Just by looking at them, you can tell thought went into these. The drawings also suggest the artist saw something in Tampa, Florida in 1977 that changed him, and the artist was able to sketch the alleged event as they witnessed it. As stated, it includes UFOs and strange-looking entities. Some have suggested this as evidence of a divine encounter, while others have labeled it as a hoax. But what do you guys think? Are these sketches proof of a mysterious encounter, or just another well-thought-through hoax? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Number 30 East Drive in Pontefract, West Yorkshire may seem like an ordinary house from the outside, but it gained notoriety due to a haunting known as the Black Monk of Pontefract. The Pritchard family, consisting of Jean and Joe Pritchard, their son Philip, 15 years old, and daughter Diane, 12 years old, experienced paranormal activities starting in 1966. The haunting included various phenomena such as water pours, lights turning on and off, furniture moving, pictures being slashed, levitating objects, knocking sounds, disappearing and reappearing items, foul smells, farmyard noises, and the appearance of a mysterious black-robed figure. The events began in August 1966 during the August Penn holiday week when the family was on vacation, leaving Philip at home with his grandmother, Sarah Scales. Sarah and Philip witnessed strange occurrences, including white powder falling from midair, puddles of water forming, and unexplained vibrations and noises. These events continued, with neighbors and authorities also witnessing the paranormal activities. The haunting continued to perplex investigators and observers, with attempts to exorcise the presence proving unsuccessful. The house, located on the site of the town's former gallows, became a subject of interest for paranormal investigators from various regions, and it has been featured on numerous television shows. The haunting at number 30 East Drive remains a significant part of paranormal lore, drawing attention from those interested in the supernatural and unexplained. Our moon, a strange thing, don't you think? Have you ever gazed upon a full moon and wondered how it got there? What strange forces could have possibly built it? There are many moons within our solar system, yet few are as strange as ours. No others are known to ring like a bell when struck. No others possess such luminosity as armor. In the 1970s, Michael Vassin and Alexander Shashurbanikov of what was then the Soviet Academy of Sciences created a thesis that the moon is actually the remnants of a very ancient spaceship created by an as-yet unknown civilization. The article was entitled, "Is the Moon the Creation of Alien Intelligence?" and was published in Sputnik, the Soviet equivalent of Reader's Digest. The suggestion of a hollow moon first appeared in science fiction when H.G. Wells wrote about a hollow moon in his 1901 book, The First Men in the Moon. Michael Vassin and Alexander Shashurbanikoff's hypothesis are based on the fact that large lunar craters, generally assumed to be formed from massive meteor impacts, are generally too shallow for scars made upon an organic body and can have flat or even convex bottoms. They proposed that small meteors are making cup-shaped depressions in the rocky surface of the moon, while the larger meteors are drilling through a rocky upper layer, hitting an armored hull underneath. Does George Lucas know something we don't? It seems he couldn't resist adding just one crater. The authors referenced earlier speculations by astrophysicist Iosif Skeklowski, who suggested that the Martian moon Phobos was an artificial satellite and hollow. Interestingly, Phobos has been claimed to appear to be hollow by numerous astronomers who have stated that it appears to have an opening on one side, making it, in a sense, similar in shape to an empty shell. Phobos' orbit is also a complete mystery. Many who have researched it claim that it should have crashed into the surface of Mars many moons ago. Between 1972 and 1977, seismometers installed on our moon by the Apollo missions recorded strange moonquakes. The moon was described to have been ringing like a bell during some of those quakes. The supportive evidence was then brought to popular attention in March 1970 in an article in Popular Science. When Apollo 12 deliberately crashed the ascent stage of its lunar module into the moon's surface, it was claimed that the moon rang like a bell for an hour, leading to arguments that it must be hollow. Several YouTubers, most notably Crow777, have supposedly recorded what is now known as lunar waves. If confirmed to exist, this may prove there is some form of functioning shield or scanning system being seen working on its surface. The fact that the moon is less dense than the Earth is also strong supportive evidence that it is indeed hollow. There are many ancient sites that we have covered here on our channel which, despite unexplained features, we continue to suppose are little researched or indeed revisited by mainstream academia. These sites predictably receive an illogical explanation for their origin and creation, dismissed and ignored as if the book regarding their history is complete and thus closed from further study. However, some sites required such long-time excavation that many researchers, some funded, others with independent interests, were able to reveal simply astonishing features. Ancient feats of engineering before they were attributed to groups who were simply incapable of achieving them. The Hypogeum in Malta is one such place, a place we have covered before. Regardless of academic denial of unexplained discoveries, it continues to be well known for the 6,000 ancient burials found within the ruins, with no less than 6 elongated, unexplainable skulls, possibly attached to corpses discovered among these reported remains that later vanished and are now utterly denied as having ever existed. Yet, many researchers became aware of these discoveries, later sharing this cover-up with the world. The official museum and curator tasked with the responsibility of caring for the site and the countless remains found within are still, to this day, inundated year by year with requests and calls regarding these unexplainable remains. So many, in fact, that the official body was compelled to put up an official statement regarding the lack of any such remains in their care, along with a denial of them ever having existed. However, there are many more anomalies, no less astonishing, still hidden within the hypogeum. Anomalies that are no less difficult to explain, or indeed deny as existing, are known as the oracle room. There is a place within this complex construction where if one stands upon a specifically made altar, their voice can seriously be heard throughout, even its speaking level, as if amplified and complemented by the structure's entire design. Yet, the most interesting thing regarding this incredible feature is the resonance in which it converts one's voice and the effect this can have on the human brain, known as the holy frequency. The hypogeum not only carries one's voice throughout but does so at 111 Hz. Paul Devereux, an archaeoacoustician, a professor from Cambridge University in the UK, has also discovered that the burial mounds of Cairn also resonated sounds at this mysterious 111 Hz. Devereux investigated this intriguing relation of 111 Hz and found out something quite interesting. He realized there were many ancient texts describing beliefs which are based on a divine sound or divine frequency principle. According to Devereux, Pythagoras created his musical scale starting with the note A, which curiously resonates at the frequency of 111 Hz. Additionally, further research with MRI scans has shown that the brain switches off the prefrontal cortex and also deactivates the language center that is responsible for holistic processing, creativity, intuition, and inducing an emotional plateau at exactly 111 Hz. This reaction, as many field tests revealed, resulted in an experience described as a divine level of meditation in a number of subjects. This transformation some now believe allows one to get connected with the universe, God, or a creator. The question is, who knew such advanced knowledge so far back within antiquity? How were they able to create such stone structures that amplified one's voice to exactly this frequency? It seems preposterous to continue to attest that this amazing structure was somehow built by our lesser capable modern ancestors over 3,500 years ago. With such amazing discoveries and cover-ups which have been made here, we feel that we have merely scratched the surface in modern times of the secrets this mysterious place must hold. It is a place that is undoubtedly highly compelling. There are many conspiracy theories pertaining to hidden ancient relics that can be found upon our moon. Conspiracies plague not only the known visit to it but also the possible past visitation by a now-lost civilization. A number of studies, including some here on our channel, have exposed not only theories but valid proofs to support the hypothesis of ancient ruins, not only being present on the moon but ancient lunar ruins having actually been visited in secret operations by NASA and other space agencies. Not only aware of said sites but accused of studying them in secret. However, a discovery has been made which has seemingly been a lot more difficult, apparently impossible to keep concealed. Thus, it has been exposed after having been discovered by a group of intellectuals at Baylor University, featured within a study published in the journal Geophysical Research Letters. They combine data from NASA's Gravity Recovery and Interior Laboratory, GRAIL, and the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, LRO. After finding a huge blob lurking over 100 miles beneath the South Pole Aitken Basin. Imagine taking a pile of metal 5 times larger than the Big Island of Hawaii and burying it underground. That's roughly how much unexpected mass we detected, said Peter B. James, assistant professor of planetary geophysics at Baylor University. The basin near the bottom of our sole natural satellite is an oval-shaped crater several miles deep and up to 1,242 miles wide. The largest found upon the moon is located on the moon's far side, also known as the dark side, which never faces the Earth, permanently concealed from the world. It's an ideal place for future investigation by secretive agencies, as the far side would make an ideal location for any base development that one wished to keep hidden from the world. However, the metal object, which is of an incredible size, is yet to be identified, and if it has been found already by secret intelligence upon Earth, it has, until now, remained unmentioned and, as far as anyone knows, unstudied. One of the explanations of this extra mass is that the metal from the asteroid that formed the crater is still embedded in the moon's mantle, said James, adding that the crater is believed to be 4 billion years old, almost as old as Earth itself. This means that if this was indeed left by a craft, the beings who made it would now, if still in existence, be unimaginably more advanced than the modern man of Earth and could, in all possibility, still be visiting our solar system. Was this crater created by a metallic craft? If so, who were these beings? Were they interdimensional or merely interstellar travelers? It is an anomaly like many others within our solar system which we find highly compelling. The channel's recent expose regarding the possible true age of the Great Pyramids outlined many fragments of evidence strongly suggesting they predate a number of past advanced law civilizations. However, it mistakenly overlooked a possible culprit for their construction: numerous layers of casing stones. Each, once an enormous undertaking, occurred at varying times within antiquity by different civilizations which many perceive as possible conservation efforts. Due to this and the fact that I had so far identified at least 3 advanced separate civilizations elsewhere, achieved through the cooperation of nearly 3 years' work focused on cataloging unexplained advanced ruins from the past, characteristics within the techniques used to construct them, toolmark signatures left upon the stones, unique, identifiable architectural design, and differentiations exclusive to particular ruins were slowly gathered and used to identify 3 distinct ancient civilizations with their own unique directions of development. However, I mistakenly presumed that the Cyclopean civilization was placed far closer to us than the original pyramid builders. This was put forward as a personal opinion, which mystery history reluctantly has to admit that, although based on logic, has been disproven by this very same methodology. In the video, it was stated, and I quote, "I have never, and now strongly feel will never find any indicative evidence of these civilizations building the footings under any of these gigantic megaliths." End quote. I had looked for a significant time for any signature stonework linking any of the civilizations I had identified to the placement of megalithic blocks over or around the 1,000-ton mark. If I discovered these characteristics beneath such enormous stones, I would have proven that they were indeed capable and more than likely the civilization responsible for their placement, with the most significant being the building of the pyramids. There were some issues which niggled me regarding this postulation before the following discovery. However, due to the lack of any footing, I had to postulate the pyramid builders were a far more capable group. One such niggle was the matching scoop-like tool marks used by the Cyclopean civilization found in Bosnia Cave, Turkey, officially proven to have been the quarry for Harran, a nearby settlement which possesses their signature Cyclopean blockwork. Cuboid blocks with a raised center, synonymous with many ancient builds with the same scoop-like tool marks also present upon the excavation of the unfinished obelisk. Yet, due to the absence of footings which would have demonstrated undeniable proof that they were indeed capable of working, moving, and placing such stones, I wrongly presumed that they were incapable of such tasks. However, unlike academia, regardless of dislike the realization that he was mistaken about something, the motive of the channel is honest research and logical deduction. Thus, admitting one's mistakes allows not only mystery history's understanding to evolve, but is the only path I can take in the pursuit of truth. The Western Wall, Wailing Wall, or Hotel, as known in Islam as the Al-Buraq Wall, is an ancient limestone wall in the Old City of Jerusalem. Originally erected to its current height by Herod the Great in 19 BC, enclosing the Temple Mount in a large rectangular structure topped by a huge flat platform. The Western Wall is considered holy by both practicing Muslims and Jews. Of the 4 retaining walls, the western one is considered to be closest to the former temple, making it the most sacred site recognized by Judaism outside the former Temple Mount Esplanade. Just over half of the wall's total height, including its 17 courses located below street level, is academically claimed to date from the end of the Second Temple period and is commonly believed to have been entirely built around 19 BC by Herod the Great. However, the western stone, weighing around 600 tons, and a few other enormous stones all located below ground level within the base, not only possess compelling evidence of incredible antiquity, but beneath this enormous stone are the signature blocks of the civilization I named the Cyclopeans. This is evidence I wrongly presumed I would never find, demonstrating that the civilization I call the Cyclopeans were indeed capable of moving such gigantic stones. What's more, they were also capable of moving the pyramid stones and indeed those of Baalbek. Yet, to be a viable suspect due to the immense age of the pyramids, evidence would need to be found to support this. And amazingly, these foundation stones do indeed contain just that. Still embedded within holes, presumably cut for the placement of the blocks, timber chalks can be found in these foundation stones, wooden planks which have, over an unimaginable amount of time, petrified into coal, stone, and flint-like materials, indicating a minimum age of at least 100,000 years. As such, decay and petrification would not have been able to occur in the currently attested timeline. Could these stones date from the original construction of Giza's Great Pyramids? It is undoubtedly a wall many followers of certain Abrahamic monotheistic faiths hold in high regard and one of incredible importance to them. Amazingly, however, due to these amazing features, it is also of high significance in regards to unraveling the secrets of history. It is undoubtedly highly compelling. Japan is a country full of ancient architecture, still to be explained by modern fields of study, with much of the method of construction indicative of lost knowledge. We have in the past covered a number of these ancient anomalies. Yet, after receiving a message from one of our viewers, we have yet again been provided with a lead, which has resulted in us adding to this long list of ancient wonders. With a smorgasbord of previously unnoticed ancient masonry still in existence at a number of ancient sites throughout the country. Many of these sites, thanks to the tremendous efficiency of their original constructors, are still in use to this day. Mostly labeled as castles, these additional discoveries further corroborate a hypothesis we presented nearly 2 years ago, a positive of a past mega-metropolis or now lost super-civilization having once called Japan home. Chris Gorman had previously visited Shuri Castle in Okinawa with his family, and after watching the studies regarding masonry on the channel, recalled seeing the same, now lost method of advanced stone building at the ancient site. He stated, and I quote, "I'm writing to you after watching your video regarding masonry. I recognized that the same masonry was present at Shuri Castle in Okinawa, Japan, which was once made from volcanic rock. Here are some pictures that I took of the castle. Some areas were completely destroyed in the Okinawa assault of World War II, but there are also areas which survived the barrage. I witnessed rock walls and pathways that had mossy lichens, some of which taking upwards of thousands of years to form. Heavy pitting was also present upon the rocks, demonstrating significant erosion I didn't notice until recently." End quote. Thanks to Chris' message, I investigated the site along with a number of surrounding sites and found that not only is Shuri Castle littered with this amazing lost technique of stone building, but other ancient castles and forts across the country also share these same characteristics. With the same synonymous incline found at Sacsayhuaman, which has shown the walls to have not only been a formidable barrier for invaders but also allowed them to survive natural disasters such as large earthquakes. The castle of Nakagusuku in the villages of Nakagusuku and Katanakagusuku, also found upon the island of Okinawa in Japan, is only second in size to Shuri and predictably is academically claimed as the work of distant ancestors falling within currently permitted history. Known as the Gasuku, this title, however, is similar to that of Priankan. It is a name given to an unknown group which is clearly a lost civilization. Yet, due to the forbidden nature of such investigative endeavors within academic fields, is simply a name that allows academia to dodge any explanation for their origins. Gasuku often refers to the castles or fortresses of the Ryukyu archipelago, which we have now realized are all remnants of a past highly capable technologically advanced lost civilization, with the origins of which among those who have the courage to study such unexplainable ruins remains a controversial subject, one forbidden by funded institutional individuals from discussing. In the archaeology of the current Okinawa prefecture, the Gasuka period refers to the archaeological period believed to have followed the Mound of Shells period, all located in the Ryukyu kingdom, which the channel now strongly believes as a whole is evidence of a past now academically concealed mega-metropolis, which were all the work of the same now lost civilization and were all connected parts of the same settlement, regardless of their virtual nature. Many Gasuka ruins of the Okinawa island are fortunately listed as World Heritage Sites by UNESCO. Listed under the name of the Gasuku and associated cultural properties of Ryukyu Kingdom, they're undoubtedly highly compelling. There are many areas of modern historical study and the conclusions thereof which not only are incorrect but carefully planned, highly funded, and precisely executed convolutions of our true history. Theft of our true origins and what lost civilizations were once capable of, creating systematically obliterating our heritage all around us. This is something the channel witnesses on a daily basis. There are many possible reasons for the motivation for such callous actions, yet all are ultimately found to have nefarious intentions: greed, power, control, and paradigm. Funded academics are complicit in this destruction. There is now very little that mystery history has not covered, investigated, or encountered regarding antiquary in subject matter. As such, it is now utterly convinced that the timeline for the history of humans is far larger, far greater, and far more spectacular than any religious, geological, archaeological, historical, or any other academically funded field or institute who greatly profit from propping up such continued misconceptions will ever willingly admit. It is up to all of us to remain thorns in the sides of institutional liars. The truth is out there, but one must be relentless in their pursuit of it. To those who fund the travesty, who publish the fallacy, it's all a big game, a power play to preserve an already well-established deception. Yet, as mentioned, these strategic moves are not only isolated to our modern era. In reality, they have always been a consequence of greedy, psychopathic, power-hungry individuals throughout the ages. Incredible, still unexplained sites re-inhabited by our more recent ancestors who strategically began to claim them as their work, with modern academics using a similar strategy for their own beneficial motives. The past invaders were motivated by the illusionary sense of power and intimidation which would have struck fear or respect for their seemingly magical capabilities into the hearts of any surrounding group. This power play strategy is also used by modern academia, using the vast array of said individuals' artifacts excavated at each site to support their posit for structural origin. This, always regardless of the complete absence of any claimed culture, leaving any diagrams, messages, or anything, not one shred of evidence showing these claimed culprits knew how to construct them. A vast portion of the general public simply goes away, presuming those running the studies know all about who built these sites and how. Thus, those unfamiliar with the family's mystery history covers can easily make a forgivable oversight, as these charlatans openly declare they do indeed know who built them, resulting in a massive misplaced faith from individuals unaware of the concealed features and the hidden agenda by the institutes who bribe others through the academic funding structure. Academics put tremendous effort into being perceived as intellectually superior to us all. This is solely for the purpose of financial gain, as if they are perceived as being more knowledgeable, by default they possess greater influence. As such, they can uphold misconceptions and concealment of the controversial and the contradictory. Mystery history often stumbles upon unexplainable anomalies, sites claimed as the work of civilizations that were simply incapable of such feats. Polygonal masonry, enormous megalithic block walls, and rare but crucial polygonal floors. The channel has also recognized signature block work found in many different countries, with many ancient stone builds ingeniously put together, weight-bearing architecture, such as the lintel in the treasury of Atrus, that due to its accurate and complex design is simply preposterous to attempt to claim as the work of a group of ancestors which we know predates our own modern understandings of such techniques. Yet, regardless, academic explanations insult our intelligence by still claiming such ridiculous explanations. It seems that due to the fact that academia not only wants to continue to appear accurate and all-knowing in their explanations as to who built said structures, but also due to the clearly funded structure and the orchestrated efforts to conceal our past is also to possibly conceal realizations that could arise within one's ponderings from the exposure of the complete picture of inexplicable, technologically advanced ruins. Not only are many of these sites ignored, but many have experienced tremendous levels of vandalism and destruction. As mentioned, many of the most impressive ancient sites have had many of their most impressive engineering legacies stolen. Lots were adapted and claimed as another's creation: the Roman road, Roman columns, blinds, etc. The Great Pyramids claimed as the work of copper-wielding ancient Egyptians. Each of these supposed accomplishments by these supposed constructors is all absent any explanation as to how they constructed such wonders. And those techniques found to have been used by these groups, the channel suspects, were replicated. For if they were engineered by these groups, how did they consistently make such tremendous leaps in such tiny time frames? It seems highly illogical and convenient that these occurrences of rapid technological development have all been found to have occurred within or near these still unexplained ruins. This clearly seems to have been due to the fact that just as we don't know how they were constructed, neither did our distant ancestors. They would have undoubtedly looked upon such accomplishments with awe and respect, a reaction they eventually craved from their enemies and allies alike. However, although these unexplained ruins claimed by these civilizations are absent any explanation as to their construction, they do still fortunately possess countless features missed by the thieves of our heritage, which not only support all I have claimed for over 3 years. A motive for this would be an attempt to port the mainstream paradigm of the builders of such. Yet it is nothing more than deceit. With modern movies involving these theaters merely an attempt to warp one's impression of their true purpose and origins. For example, Delphi in Greece, a site we have covered in the past, is one of the only sites we are aware of which still contains a near-pristine picture of the building techniques once present at sites that contain ancient amphitheaters. Segesta is still another little-known, rarely shared temple. Ruin that due to this continued propaganda regarding Roman responsibility is merely overlooked or rather dismissed and brushed under the rug. Nothing more than another one of their many ancient ruins. However, the channel perceives such sites in a different light. Not only does it contain an amphitheater, one suspiciously robbed out of its stage stonework, but Delphi is clearly of a very similar age, with Delphi still displaying a polygonal stage floor. Yet at Segesta, a group of individuals perhaps from a certain institute, which shall not be named, who have, for over a century, been repeatedly reported as actively seeking out buying, stealing, and eventually concealing many controversial artifacts. Yet the deliberate destruction of features such as the stone at these sites is beyond the pale. These structures have survived millennia until primitive beliefs poisoned our species to such an extent that they destroy the truth in favor of their fictional storybooks. The temple, although predictably now missing its roof, still contains features that not only fly in the face of academic teaching but reinforces our conclusions of the sites having far greater antiquity than the Greeks. And regardless of the attempts to destroy its advanced anomalies, advanced features are also found in the foundation blocks, out of reach of this group of morally deficient vigilantes' protuberances. These enigmatic notches are a signature we have already identified previously as an enigmatic feature, a signature of a lost civilization, one which we call the polygonal civilization. Additionally, the incredible levels of pitting found upon the columns are clearly demonstrative of many eons of erosion. In a mainly temperate climate, this process of erosion would be considerably slower than that of a more abrasive or damp environment, making such erosion scars much slower to form. Thus much older than what would witness in a location with far greater variation in seasonal conditions indicative of its unimaginable age, is but another structure claimed to date from the Greek and Roman eras. Yet when the condition of said temple is compared to other structures known for a fact to have dated from the same supposed era, it clearly exposes not only academia's conspiracy but that they are indeed remnants left by a now lost highly advanced civilization. They are undoubtedly highly compelling. We have in the past covered the astonishing discovery solely made by Dr. Sam Osmanagat within Bosnia, long thought to have merely been a hill, completely overgrown and neglected, with many locals even building upon and farming its inclines. Dr. Aspanaga, however, after studying the geology of the area, realized the reason for the precise angles of this supposed natural formation, eventually confirming that it was indeed an enormous ancient pyramid, one that after long arduous research has been found to rival even those of Giza, indeed even its plateau, especially if one takes into consideration the following expose. Regardless of constant mockery, objections, resistance, and dismissal he has predictably experienced from mainstream-funded academia, Dr. Osman Agate has not only unearthed vast portions of this ancient structure, proving beyond doubt that it was indeed an ancient pyramid, but has also successfully penetrated its inner sanctum along with many other highly intriguing ancient sites located within the local vicinity, all littered with stones that seemingly give off resonance frequencies that are not only being ignored by mainstream scientists but baffling all those who valiantly decide to explore their features. Yet thanks to Jock and Sam's continued efforts, our understandings of the incomprehensible, astonishingly true scale of the site has increased dramatically. And indeed the feat that whoever built it went through in constructing the site is truly unbelievable. Jock spent 16 months as the official videographer for the Archaeological Park Foundation, a Bosnian NGO nonprofit organization created by Dr. Sam Osman Agate. during which, and thanks to the considerable effort of hundreds of volunteers who since 2010 have been involved in the backbreaking excavations of the site, clearing many tons of rock and earth from the area, including the Ravni tunnels. Such tunnels are apparently widely known locally for their healing powers, which upon investigation, many alternative investigators have recorded unusual bioelectromagnetic energy levels within. Yet, Jock and Sam's most recent personal discoveries are the connection of these tunnels located a fair distance from the pyramid itself, interwoven with all the local ancient sites. A result clearly intended by the past intelligence responsible for their creation. These tunnels backfilled 4,600 years ago, for reasons that many have postulated, was done to avoid further degeneration of the original civilization's work. Thus, we're clearly a conservation effort that, just like I have postulated on several other videos, is the purpose for the casing stones, which can still be found upon the Great Pyramids, were done by groups who clearly revered these sites. Furthermore, regardless of this connection of tunnels, Jock and Samir have also realized, thanks to these contributory excavation efforts, something truly astonishing regarding not only the Bosnian pyramid but the entire surrounding area which, just like the pyramid, were long presumed to have been merely a natural geological landscape. However, all of the curious sites that have been found dotting the surrounding area were not only undeniably man-made but that the entire landscape was actually once carved out by hand or possibly machine, with the river Fonaiza, which runs through the entire site, masterfully designed to permanently remain placid, also man-made. And due to the fossilized stonework found, enabling this water's manipulation, according to Jock, indicates it could have possibly been completed millions instead of thousands of years ago, successfully creating a river that gently meanders through the site. Who built the Bosnian plateau? Who had such tremendous earth-moving and water manipulation capabilities, seemingly many hundreds of thousands or possibly millions of years ago? As the investigations within the area continue, it is slowly growing into one of the most enormous, most compelling areas of evidence of ancient, advanced, lost civilization to be found anywhere on Earth. Thank you very much to Jock for bringing all this astonishing information to light, furthering all of our understandings of their past capabilities, and as the research grows, so does the compounding proof of these past highly capable civilizations. We will, of course, keep you posted through our connections. A place that is undoubtedly highly compelling. Kulab, a site that I have previously covered and also personally exposed the true scale of, seemingly or more than likely deliberately overlooked by academia. Kulab not only possesses an enormous ancient wall which surrounds the entrance to the site, which according to academia was seemingly placed upon the plateau of a naturally formed hill. However, after personally investigating the site myself, I found that not only had the wall constructed took unimaginable effort to build, but that the site beyond this impenetrable fortress had, in fact, been backfilled with earth, artificially creating the plateau that geologists, academics, and archaeologists alike long ignored and merely assumed was selected due to natural features, were, in fact, artificially created. However, it is clear for all to see that not only was the plateau painstakingly created to backfill to this fortress as well, but the ingenious entrances were also the work of a people of tremendous intellect. Many of the passageways into the site allow many to enter the passages. However, as the invaders made their way along these elevations to penetrate the fortress itself, not only were they wide open to arrow fire from above from both sides, but also by design. The passageways slowly narrowed to a point where only one person at a time could actually enter the site. However, the purpose of this video is not the astonishing architectural features of the site itself, but possibly an exposure of the true creators of the site. A group of people with characteristics which may come as a shock to some and been long predicted by others. Found deep within a cave system within the site, a burial chamber at the depth of 800 meters, a burial chamber created at this location for the sole purpose of preserving these individuals' remains for as long as possible, and also to avoid the ravages tomb raiders that have been experienced over the eons by many of the other burial sites by many different cultures. There are many wooden idols that have seemingly been treated with lost technologies and have survived the climate astonishingly well. Yet this set of mummies could expose once and for all who were responsible for this astonishing sight and indeed its miraculous characteristics. Thankfully, although much of the ancient tombs had been ravaged by robbers over the years, this absence of mummies didn't deter archaeologist War in Church, who's worked for 19 years to save Los Pichados and learn its secrets. seemingly successfully unraveling its innermost protected secrets and possibly coming face to face with its original builders. They were known as the Chachapoya or the Cloud People by the Incas, who, by this stage, had re-inhabited the ancient pre-Incan ruins which dot Peru, and due to the ingenious nature of the fortress, the tremendous efforts that went into building it, and the seemingly impenetrable nature of its design, the Cloud People seemingly survived all the way up until the Spanish invasion, only succumbing to the introduction of smallpox, which the Spanish seemingly brought with them. An intriguing characteristic of these enigmatic people is the fact that they left no written language yet adorned their site with countless stone carvings of orchids, butterflies, and jaguars. According to Warren Church, for more than 500 years, the Chachapoya cut farm terraces and villages into these steep slopes. This burial chamber found deep within the site shows that not only did they display great respect for their dead, but that they were of European origin, white-skinned and blonde-haired, with Church apparently stating that the mummies are the most beautiful past people he has ever witnessed. Were these mummies the remains of the original builders of this astonishing site? Or were they like the Incas, merely re-inhabitations, although how they got there to these Peruvian hills and controllers of Calap itself remains a mystery. Yet white mummies of seemingly European ancestry have been found throughout the globe. Does this suggest that the ruling force we so often postulate once existed, that many known as the Atlanticians shared their knowledge across the globe before catastrophe? Regardless of their ethnicity, we find such research by Church highly admirable and such discoveries highly compelling. Did ancient giants once exist? This question, I predict, will get one of the most varied reactions of all the questions in which I pose on my channel. The reason for this, a reason of the equally varied religious and scientific theories permitted to exist and survive within our modern societies. This variation in mindsets, although appearing to many as opposing, allows for volumes of debates often hosted by opportunistic deviants, which I often like to call the book pushers. Are the theories which are the backbone of the status quo? As explained within my specials, the connecting piece of the puzzle which unites all these opposed ideologies and thus the resulting variations in opinion to the question I have just presented. Is there a tested timeline of human development, all of which being either of a similar chronology or a logical claim? We are all aware of the theory of evolution. A theory I also expose within my special, a mere convoluted explanation for life adaptations to environmental changes. Yet what many are not aware of, a reality of the true theory of evolution, a consequence of life conveniently overlooked en masse, experiencing minimal financial promotion. This, I feel, due to a presumably perceived as an unimportance in the processes of concealment by these funders of the status quo. Is the parallel theory also a result of environmental change, devolution? I have personally claimed that although there seemingly exist millions of species, this definition species is merely attributed to that which I would myself perceive as breeds. My reasoning for this opinion is the lack of any demonstrative evidence of evolution theory actually being fact and naming breeds as different species, a successful muddying of the waters surrounding the Darwinian theory. There are many forms of what one could call evidence, for evidence is not proof in all its forms, a fact many may not be aware of. And within science, these many forms, especially within scientific fallacies, are often the weapon of choice when it comes to funded constructs with an intention of concealing a truth from the masses. Firstly, there is circumstantial evidence, which could best be described as coincidental. For example, if there were to be a crime taking place and the culprit of said crime was witnessed to have been wearing a red hat, if an individual, even one who could have committed a similar crime in their own past, have been in the same area at the same time, also wearing a red hat, this is not evidence of guilt, it is merely circumstantial evidence. Secondly, supportive evidence. This is usually used within a presentation of a hypothesis, especially evolution theory. For example, Richard Dawkins and his primate skulls, which he often parades around displaying their gradual adaptations to environmental developments, constantly noting our own skeletal similarities with said ancient apes' DNA similarity, along with anything that could support a specific claim yet lack the power to crucially prove such ideology as fact, is correctly defined as supportive evidence. It supports such claims but does not prove such claims. They are just more compelling an argument than circumstantial evidences. Yet, thirdly, demonstrative evidence. This is in essence true evidence. The most powerful as it displays the claim as fact, a reliable form of evidence in which to base one's premise, as this could be defined as proof of concept, a visual, chemical, or any other form of physical display of that specific theory's function and indeed functioning. Demonstrative evidence is a demonstration of such. It is the only thing which one can rely on as proof beyond doubt. And within honest scientific study, demonstrative evidence is often used to display reliable repeated results, thus proving that the claim of said science be true. Yet this most crucial form of evidence is lacking, absent from evolution theory. What many call species are merely breeds created through adaptation, the true definition of evolution in our modern world. Adaptations to environmental changes or reproductive preferences which has allowed for the successful continuation of its existence. Vertebrates are the true species, with phyla being the first set of true species ever found on Earth. Phyla just appeared mysteriously and rapidly turning up during the explosion of life on Earth, known as the Cambrian explosion and evident which occurred around 100 million years ago. Yet these groups have never seen any additions or indeed so-called leaps as Darwin once postulated. A postulation I believe he himself later realized that due to his eagerness as a young, undoubtedly intelligent man, along with encouraged well-funded pursuits of proof of his opinion, may have been overzealous in his claims, later relinquishing many of them in cryptic quotations. He most probably realized he had been pawned in a game to conceal what I am about to expose to you all. Would you find it ironic that demonstrative evidence concerning my questions of giants once existing here on Earth has been systematically concealed from the world for the exact reason that those who have funded evolution know that such physical remains of such enormous beings is demonstrative evidence of their past existence? Would you find it ironic or predictable? Yet although the physical remains of these enormous beings may have been hidden and continue to be at tremendous costs and efforts, there are many other proofs that, although circumstantial or merely supportive, can still be found all over the world. Maybe I am no better than an evolutionist pushing a theory I cannot prove. Yet I feel my conveyance of things as they truly are and my open and willing acceptance to this. My honest exclamation that I do not pursue to promote anything I do not know as fact for profit. That I do not attempt to conceal anything from my viewers and that I merely pose questions with no deceptive convictions, especially in intention of pushing books which often decrease one's perception of self-value, not only vindicates me of the same crime, but relinquishes me of any similarity with such profiteering creators who possess intentions of such deviance, still preserved in literature all over the world. Historical newsreels, newspaper articles, witness testimonies, and a one-man mission on an island. Clues to a past existence of giant humans does indeed still exist. On a previous video, I delved into the story of Ralph Glidden. While digging on Catalina Island in the Gulf of California between 1919 and 1928, he found, according to him and numerous newspapers which were covering the story at the time, a total of 3,000 giant-sized six-fingered skeletons with an average height of around 7 to 9 feet. Interestingly, and supportive of their past existence, this six-finger characteristic is not isolated to Glidden's claims. Six-fingered giant skeletons have been reported worldwide. Additionally, many others' claims of giant remains discovered have been said to have been buried sitting up and also to have two sets of teeth, top and bottom, and often had red hair. Furthermore, along with the reams of individual testimonies, the newspaper articles, and the repeated accusations made against large historical institutions, most particularly the Smithsonian, there has been countless ancient footprints found by vigilant explorers all over the globe with some of gigantic size. Going back to my digression regarding devolution, could we have possibly been these giant beings? That after catastrophe, possibly one of such magnitude it gave us the seasons caused us as a species to shrink. It is now well known after intensive study of well-preserved dinosaur brains that birds are in fact their distant relations. Could birds have experienced a similar fate, answering the long-asked question, what happened to the dinosaurs? Could their size also be the result of the same catastrophic event? That due to environmental changes were demanded to change to survive, both shrinking to the scales we now are. It would indeed offer an explanation as to how such enormous megalithic ruins exist all over Earth, relics that if looked at as the work of the modern man are simply baffling and evade explanation, yet if looked at as the work of humans of 10, 20, maybe even 30 feet in height could be easily explainable. It is certainly an interesting conspiracy. For if the Smithsonian, for example, had no secrets, then firstly, why are they so often mentioned within old newsreels as taking such remains for, quote, further study? And additionally, why would they require such a large vault beneath a main institution, which the general population is prohibited to explore? Whether these bones finally made it into private collections is unknown. However, in March 2012, an unlabeled box was discovered resting deep within the Catalina Island Museum archives. In this box was Glidden's collection of secret records, among which was, most importantly, a series of unique photographs showing Ralph Glidden indeed excavating one of his authentic, giant, and very ancient skeletons. We find all these suspicious factors highly compelling. It is now a well-known, heavily studied fact that the modern-day bird was once a very different-looking animal. Evolution in the form of a radical transformational adaptation forced upon them by gradual changes in the Earth's environment, from which they once came, that being the dinosaur. We now know this to be fact thanks to modern technology. Our capability to now scan these fossils, some found remarkably well preserved, still fortunately containing many things, which have allowed us to discover that dinosaurs had bird brains, or more accurately, birds have dinosaur brains, with current investigations even shining light upon the reality that many of these gigantic animals, including the T-Rex, once had manes made of feathers. This drastic change from the dinosaur resulting in the vast array of creatures we see today, from the ostrich to the albatross, even to the commonly domesticated budgerigar. Yet they all share one common trait: a significant reduction in their size. Even animals which survived unchanged, such as the crocodile, still shrank considerably. This shrinking of said species having been demanded of them by environmental changes. Evolutionary adaptation, as we have covered in the past, is, in the channel's opinion, in its true sense, an adaptation of specific sets of vertebrate types, the true definition of species, not as Darwinian theory posits of leaps between such. Thus, evolution witnessed within the animal kingdom is not indicative of a shared single ancestry, but inseparable branching from specific vertebrae or phyla groups, never proven to have leaped from one to another. As such, modern-day birds could, in fact, be seen as the product of the evolutionary adaptation. This loss of size would in all probability have also resulting in a deterioration in their intellectual potential. This being due to the considerable decrease in brain mass, possibly derived from cataclysm, which deprived them of the resources needed to remain at such gigantic sizes. The reason for this digression is the channel's postulation of the same process, having once possibly occurred to Homo sapiens also. Could this explain why some of the oldest ruins are also some of the most advanced, with many remaining beyond the reach of modern man's ability to understand them? Is it possible that man once had a much higher intellect than us today due to a far greater size cranium? Simply put, were we once giants just as modern-day birds were once dinosaurs? Legends and accounts of ancient giants can be found all over the world, also featuring in many ancient religious teachings. Additionally, many of the still unexplained sites of Earth regularly featured doorways, many feet, sometimes even meters above that which is required by and for humans of our modern scale. The Terracotta Army, for example, is believed by many independent researchers, including Mystery History, to have been made by a lost civilization, and their average height, intriguingly, is much taller than modern man. Many accounts exist of giants which share similar descriptive characteristics: red hair, double-row teeth, elongated skulls, etc., with many accounts of red-headed giant remains actually discovered and excavated all over the world. Yet often all that survives of these reported events is a small news article regularly noting Smithsonian involvement in said recoveries, yet seemingly and conveniently always slipping away from the public domain. Lovelock Cave being another example. Locals tell of it once being the home of a group of red-headed giants, which was eventually blocked and the giants burnt alive. A giant handprint still visible on a rock in the cave, presumably made by one of these individuals during their unpleasant demise. Yet what has to be the most compelling piece of evidence, fortunately still in view, to suggest giants did indeed once exist, are footprints found all over the globe, once laid down upon sediment, now fossilized into solid stone. These footprints range in size up to a few meters in length, indicating that humans at some point in the distant past may have been even larger than many dinosaur species. This would have undoubtedly given them the capability to have moved the ancient megaliths we often cover, and also the ingenious nature of many of said sites due to a larger brain. Are these footprints proof that we too, just like the modern bird, were once monstrous in size? Yet at some point within antiquity experienced a similar or the same cataclysmic events which forced a shrinking of our mass over many generations. Could this de-evolution have been due to what titled the axis of the Earth? When our Earth was aligned, did it have the ability to provide and sustain such growth, once providing a suitable habitat for an abundance of resources required for the far greater sized food chain witnessed during the Jurassic period? We find the evidence to support the hypothesis of giant ancient humans highly compelling. There are countless ancient sites found all over the planet that are not only far older than currently academically claimed, by individuals funded to come up with specifically permitted dates for their creation, selling one's integrity in favor of financial securities and an authoritative position within society offered to them in return for their obedient deceits. Like a mule guided by a carrot, these individuals not only fear losing such reputations and handsome incomes if one were to tell the truthful story regarding said sides, but they unquestionably turn a blind eye to the many areas that I cover, which are often not only implausible to state where the work of the particular permitted re-inhabitants placed much closer to us within history, but to suggest that such ancestors were capable of said feats is simply a preposterous claim. They often knowingly and deliberately overlook such features, due to their lack of any plausible explanation for such accomplishments. As such, with many ancient sites simply ignored or are disguised as closed bookcases with a dull, deliberately disinteresting tale of origin. These academics have some of the most intimate access to these ruins, yet deny the world's population a true account of said relics. For to suggest that a civilization less advanced than us accomplished the placement of megaliths far into the thousands of tons precisely atop one another with awe-inspiring stonework details, and polygonal brickwork seemingly created like a puzzle of unique pieces among many other baffling features, I feel is a proof of a deliberate agenda-driven conspiracy concealing said site's true origins. These unexplainable anomalies, the main reason why said individuals perceive me as a threat, not only to their funding but also their positions of trusted authority within modern society. For the truths I tell, due to the inexplicable nature of their existence and their lack of exposure within academic studies, exposed the field as a funded, organized group of deceivers. These features are simply impossible for them to explain, yet they continue to claim that they were built by people who were undeniably incapable of such feats. This is why many unexplainable artifacts simply vanish and why many ancient sites are not only brushed under the proverbial carpet but said features overlooked, ignored, and not mentioned at all. And our next relic is no exception. Many people have heard of the Great Wall of China, one of the only ancient ruins which is so large it can be seen from space. A very famous wall. Yet an even greater number of people are unaware of another Great Wall which can be found within India. Successfully overlooked by modern historians and antiquarians alike, this wall known as the Compilation has been claimed to be merely a recently created ruin. Yet I feel just like the many other ancient ruins found around the globe is far older than currently claimed. It is of an astonishing size, and a number of alternative, so-called fringe researchers, which academics like to derogatorily call them, have found substantial evidence that not only is the upper layers far older than claimed, but the entire wall sits upon a foundation immensely older than the wall we see today. A foundation that many have concluded is so old that it had simply turned to dust through the eons, rebuilt at a currently unknown time within antiquity. The wall stretches an astonishing 22 miles and once protected hundreds of extremely ancient dwellings and measured at over 40 feet thick to suggest that such a feat could have been accomplished by our more recent ancestors, who the founders of mainstream academia permits is a tough positive to agree with. For if such a claim were true, why is the wall seemingly ignored by modern history? I feel the reason the wall has been successfully kept largely unknown is due to the fact that if openly studied and widely known of, more people would research such site, eventually realizing like many before them that the wall is far older than currently claimed, and possesses such enormous amounts of stone, along with an immensely older foundation, that current claims of its origins and age are simply incorrect, and a clear attempt to shrug off this astonishing structure as a reasonably modern creation which they hope will not be looked at closely. An attempt to close the book on a possible antediluvian ruin, which many people, as a result, told with a dull, deceptive history for its existence, which not only stifles one's interest regarding the wall's origin but deters the curious from ever investigating the wall's truly astonishing nature. A motivation which I feel is the main driving force behind its lack of public exposure. Who rebuilt the Great Wall of India? How old is its far older, highly eroded foundation? The Great Wall of India was an astonishing feat of ancient engineering, a feat that academia would prefer stay largely unknown, a reality which I find highly compelling. There are many astonishing ancient structures located within India, arguably some of the most intricately detailed structures to be found anywhere on Earth. We have in the past covered a number of these structures, not only due to the astonishing detail displayed upon their stonework, but also many other compelling enigmatic details that to this day remain unexplained. A personal recommendation for an alternative archaeological researcher of Indian ruins is Praveen Mohan, over at Phenomenal Travel Videos. Yet due to the countless ancient anomalies that can be found within India, we rarely step on each other's proverbial feet. For example, during my own personal research, I have not only found that many of the hillside temples seemingly hewn from the bedrock of Earth would even to this day be incredibly difficult to replicate if not impossible, with some of the most astonishing not only attached to religious belief and historical rumor to a mountain in the Himalayas, a factor we have also previously covered with my personal observations. Regardless of the fact that many locals pertain to it being an ancient pyramid, discovered noticeable evidence of the entire base of the mountain once having been hewn into an artificial crescent. Also unclear is if the entire mountain is a man-made pyramid disguised by the erosion of many millennia. The research team claimed, quote, "The stratum is horizontal with the layers of stone slightly varying in color. The dividing lines show up clear and distinct, which gives the entire mountain the facade of having been built by giant hands of huge blocks of reddish stone, with the stone quarried out to create the astonishing temples and accepted artistic masterpiece, just like Yangyu Cave in China, have never been found." Additionally, during my own pursuit for clues as to how and indeed who could have created such temples, I have identified signature tool marks in several areas that match that of many other ancient ruins. Indeed, such as Yangshan Quarry, also in China, providing strong evidence that whoever was responsible for these ruins may have indeed been the same civilization or, as our Atlantean videos have postulated, were commanded to be constructed by a dominant civilization sharing such technologies with the native populations, employing them to create such wonders. Thus, this would also explain the matching signatures of advanced stone-cutting tool marks found on different continents. Like our research into the variation in ancient stone clamps, a method that was undeniably shared throughout the globe, yet the methods of creating such clamps and the resulting metallurgy varies from continent to continent. As we have previously stated on many occasions, whoever was responsible for these incredible ancient sites seemingly vanished at some point within antiquity, leaving many ancient quarries and temples unfinished. One of the temples that we use to link the tool marks with other sites around the world, Veft von Coil, one of the precious abandoned sites that, like so many other ancient advanced ruins that were being built around the world, vitally shows the rough stone-cutting signatures left by advanced machinery that was once responsible for their initial cutting. This, before the refinement of such structures' carvings, with many other sites in India that, due to their geographical positioning and thus protection from erosion, still possess these same signature tool marks. However, the purpose of today's video is probably one of the most peculiar anomalies in India, and could be perceived by some as one of the most compelling pieces of evidence of advanced ancient machinery having once been responsible for these ancient structures, known as the Tangur Brihadiswarar Temple, which was supposedly constructed by the Cholas. However, the temple possesses a characteristic which was not only out of the capabilities of the Cholas dynasty, but to me is compelling proof of a pre-Diluvian civilization having been responsible for its construction. As atop the temple, at a height of 216 feet above ground level, is a solid lump of granite carved with perfection, yet has been realized at an astonishing weight of 80 tons. To put that in perspective, according to academia and ancient culture with no advanced technology, especially lifting technologies, a dynasty well studied and explored by modern academia, the heartland of the Cholas was the Hurdle Valley of the Kaveri River. Although their power was considerable and was probably complemented by such claims of astonishing feats of architecture, regardless, the question remains: how did the civilization raise such an enormous stone? It seems to us that such lanes were merely made to impress their enemies and allies, and the fact that academia is severely lacking any explanation to how such a feat was accomplished strongly supports my suspicion that the temple is, in fact, an antediluvian ruin, and as such, highly compelling. Although many academic bodies and the individuals funded by said institutions are only allowed to attribute ancient ruins to known heavily researched past civilizations, there exist many features within these sites found all over the world which tell a very different story. Not only are they indicative of an ancient civilization far more capable than our well-studied more recent ancestors, but many of them share features within their builds with many other sites who are separately claimed by the as-mentioned institutions as the work of completely different past civilizations, who we feel are far more likely based on said evidence to have been mere re-inhabitants of these sites, which allowed these civilizations to flourish, adopting said features into their own cultures, and often claiming said works as their own to outside groups. Not only do the similarities show an undeniable connection with sites currently argued as completely isolated ancient works of architecture, but many of the most astonishing features of said sites are not only ignored but often overlooked by the world as a result, which we also feel is strong evidence of not only a deliberate attempt to ignore the facts in favor of fallacy but clear proof of a conspiracy which is largely funded in an effort to keep these particular proverbial smoking guns hidden and under wraps, often avoiding further study as a result. This clearly due to the reality they contain regarding facts about the history of man, which academia is not only responsible for hiding in favor of funding but is responsible for hiding the true history of man from man himself in an effort to merely appear all-knowing in the face of things they currently have no explanation for. And the so-called Inca Road is indeed one of these said ancient anomalies, which is of an astonishing size. It is so big, in fact, it even dwarfs the Great Wall of China. An ancient relic so big it can be seen from space. One might ask, how can I not have been informed of such an ancient relic? But once one realizes the current academically baffling accomplishment this so-called income masterpiece must have once been, the conspiracy to keep such a site largely unknown will become clear. It is a road system that not only links nearly every unexplained ancient ruin currently known to exist within Peru, connecting Pumapuchu, Sacsayhuaman, Machu Picchu, Ollantaytambo, along with many others. It, in fact, covers an incredible 25,000 miles, topping the Chinese wall by nearly 7,000 miles, going all the way through Peru, Chile, and spreading out far beyond, with bridges, tunnels seemingly carved straight through cliff faces and even following sheer drops once cut horizontally into near-vertical rock faces, with plunging sides dropping at times thousands of meters to valleys below. We strongly believe that although the road has clearly been utilized by an Unimag a large number of travelers and has been severely eroded away nearly everywhere, the method of construction now hidden by erosion that the surface, just like that of the roads of Pompeii, was actually formed using a now lost stone technique, now largely known as that of polygonal masonry. Not only a lost, now unexplained technique of stone building indicative of a lost civilization and technologies, but the sheer size of the road and the features accomplished along its incredible length still provides countless unexplained features, which cannot be explained as Inca. Yet not only is it and its features academically ignored, but we feel the proposition of it being an Inca relic, just like all the ancient sites we have already covered in which connects are far too advanced to be claimed as Incan. How can one claim that such a relic was built by our more recent ancient ancestors when not only does the site link much of ancient Peru and is largely ignored, but not only the road, but all said sites currently hold feats of ancient engineering which cannot be explained? It is clearly a feature that is indicative of a far more advanced, far more ancient civilization which once constructed this road and the sites found along it merely re-inhabited by our now well-studied far more recent ancient ancestors. It is a place we find highly compelling. We recently covered the so-called Inca Road, an ancient stone pathway that stretches an astonishing 25,000 miles across Peru, Chile, and far beyond. Linking countless ancient as yet unexplained ruins, this enormous ancient road was carved straight through solid cliff faces along near vertical rock faces and is an astonishing example of ancient architecture. Although currently claimed as being Incan and conveniently often overlooked by mainstream academic study, along with the sites it connects, it is clearly an example of building capability far out of the reach of Incan civilization. The Huayca del Su, an adobe brick temple that regardless of the clear feats of its construction along with the currently recognized number of builders involved is regardless of these facts, still stubbornly claimed as having been built by the so-called Machi civilization between 100 CE to 800 CE, located upon the northern coast of Peru. The temple is one of several ruins found near the volcanic peak of Cerro Blanco. The other major ruin at the site is the nearby Huaca de la Luna, a better preserved but smaller temple. According to academic opinion, by 450 CE, 8 different stages of construction had been completed on the Huayca del Sul. The technique was additive, new layers of bricks were laid directly on top of the old, hence large quantities of bricks were required for the construction. Archaeologists have estimated that the Huaca del Sul was composed of over 130 million adobe bricks, and was the largest pre-Columbian adobe structure built in the Americas. The number of different makers' marks on the bricks suggests that over 100 different communities contributed to the construction of the Huaycas. Yet, regardless of the clearly astonishing ancient feat that this structure was largely attributed to be the remains of an ancient pyramid, The facts surrounding the past true purpose of this structure are merely ignored in favor of an attribution to a more modern ancestor. For if it is indeed noted as being that of an ancient pyramid, like many alternative independent and often nicknamed fringe researchers have, it would open the door to some controversial questions. One, in particular, being why would a civilization located at the claimed time within history build pyramids, just like those upon the African continent, namely upon the Giza Plateau? Why would a culture that had supposedly never met ancient Egyptians, just like those ruins found all over Guatemala, and indeed South America, have built these enigmatic structures purely by coincidence? It seems that the evidence has mounted over the years in opposition to such opinions. And these ancient ruins are simply improbable to have merely come about by chance or coincidence and were indeed once built with full intentions that are now lost to the eons. Who built the Huayca del Sol? Why did they build it? It is undoubtedly an astonishing ancient ruin, one which we find highly compelling. There are places on our planet that still contain some astonishing ruins originating from a very distant antiquity, quietly studied by academics the world over and just as quietly dismissed as modern works are from not-so-distant, more primitive ancestors. Or if fated enough, attributed to natural activities by geologists funded by the same infrastructure as that of the academic world paid to explain the origins of the ruins of Earth, to a particular already permitted timeline. Not only are these funded individuals directed to only attribute such sites to a certain timeline, but if they go against the grain by actually attributing them or sharing data contradicting such timelines, it is often thrown out and their funding ended, slowly drying up with their future opportunities in the field as well as their prospects and ultimately their reputation. Regardless of this, facts do not lie. And the more one explores the anomalies, Speaker 1, the Dighton Rock, a 40-ton boulder in Massachusetts, USA, is a mysterious relic indeed. Not only does it not fit in with the surrounding environment, but the incredibly ancient inscriptions found upon it could unlock highly controversial truths regarding the reach of ancient civilization that would fly in the face of current academic theory. What is interesting regarding this enormous rock is that it was not only placed where it now lay by natural geologic activities many millennia ago, dropped where it lay on the shores of the Taunton River by the melting of an ancient glacier during the end of the last ice age, measuring 5 feet high, 9.5 feet wide, and 11 feet long, made of gray-brown crystal and sandstone. But number one has been able to say with certainty who first wrote upon the rock, what they wanted to communicate, or why they created these derious markings with it, now known to have been the inspiration for over 1,000 books and articles and the basis for over 35 hypotheses. The mystery and indeed debate regarding the writings on the Dighton Rock continue to this day. And a possible motive for the mystery to remain unsolved is to protect the currently attested academic theories regarding the past of man. Thus they could quite possibly be markings left by a past, now lost civilization, or one that has long been claimed to have been unable to have had such far-reaching settlements. The antiquity of the writings is undoubtable, as many scientific investigations have proved that they are indeed very old. Yet what is hotly debated is the origins and indeed the civilization responsible for creating them. Although predictably since 1680, when Reverend John Danforth visited the rock, a mainstream academically approved theory regarding the stone has been put forward and popularized by said institutions. However, the fact that the glyphs, more possible language etched upon the rock, has never been deciphered remains. After seeing it, he decided that the carvings on it were made by Native Americans, specifically the Wampanoag Indians, after being told the tale of a ship arriving, and a battle between the locals and mysterious newcomers were told to him from long ago in the distant past. Danforth drew the symbols visible on the top half of the petroglyph and then wrote, quote, "Is reported from the tradition of the old Indians that there came a wooden house with men of another country in it, swimming up the river Assinant, that fought the Indians and slew their Saturn." Such interpret the figures to be hieroglyphical, the first figure representing a ship without masts and mere wrack cast upon the shoals, the second representing a head of land, possibly a cape with a peninsula. End quote. Danforth's drawings were requested by the Royal Society of London in 1732 and are now preserved in the British Museum. This, not only proof of their acceptance by mainstream academia, possibly due to its lack of any controversial claims, just a simple mention of newcomers and no further mention of their possible identity. Yet the fact that these inscriptions remain undecipherable makes the possibility of the newcomers being from a locality nearby illogical, and suggests that they were instead created by a group who came from a now lost or possibly concealed advanced civilization. Another hypothesis put forward by Israel Stiles in 1767 while he was the president of Yale College claimed that the famous seafarers, the Phoenicians, had made their way all the way to North America on at least one voyage. Stiles believed that the writings were left by them to simply show that they were once there. Stiles' idea was a popular one in Europe for some time and were embraced by Antoine Cortage-Belline, a French scholar, as a possible answer to the identity of their creators. He said that the carvings on the rocks should be split into 3 sections: the past, present, and future. Some of the images he identified were an oracle and butterfly representing the future, a horse and a beaver meeting, symbolical representations of the two contents interacting in the present, and the divine figures or symbols of Minerva, telescope, and Priapus, representative of the past. Yet the mystery of who created the carvings remains to this day. Additionally, the original location of the carvings also remains a mystery. The fact that the boulder has landed where it now lay due to geological activities means it could have originated in a location far away from where it now lay. Was it made by a now lost civilization, or possibly one that academia continues to claim was not able to travel such vast distances? The mystery surrounding the Dighton Rock continues, and it is undoubtedly one that is highly compelling. The more may first find themselves coming to similar conclusions as we have regarding the illogical nature and often impossibility of these advanced ancient ruins having been created using now lost knowledge or technologies, once being the work of the academically claimed culprit. Siberia is indeed one of these places, and due to the remote nature of some of the ruins found here, are easily dismissed, hidden from a modern world battling to regain the truth regarding our past. Altai is an area that contains many ancient megaliths so old they are undeniably the legacy of a civilization now long lost to history. Yet this tremendous age is a double-edged sword. Not only could they eventually reveal, like done during current studies of the antiquities already covered on the channel, reveal that ruins found across the globe just don't date from a single civilization, but are, in fact, the work of separate civilizations who have presumably been and gone at different times, making the flourishing of man and indeed our eventual decline a cyclical occurrence, but due to tremendous age can also be dismissed as nothing but mere geological features. This regardless of the still remaining highly eroded evidence that can be found at such sites, which is indeed indicative of artificial origins. Furthermore, there also exists a number of supposed hillsides that, just like the pyramids of Giza, have resisted the tests of time more successfully than their polygonal counterparts, meaning their undeniable shape and alignments have survived long enough for them to stick out like sore thumbs amongst a landscape which is unbalanced and predictably unaligned. A background made by nature, yet their angle of descent, their ridged edges, and ultimately their artificial nature still allows one to recognize them and identify them as not only places of interest, but ancient pyramids hidden from man for countless millennia, protected by mountain ranges and hostile, inhospitable climates, which our modern technology is slowly allowing us to rediscover regardless of a modern academia who would rather we didn't. Additionally, not only can these artificial and highly intriguing features be found here, but also possible evidence to indicate how their creators came to an untimely demise, possibly at the hands of immense heat and a possible natural disaster. Found within the nature reserve of Ergaki among the western Sion mountain range is a feature that has rarely been seen, let alone photographed. An entire side of one of the mountains was at some time within the distant past turned to magma during an event yet to be understood. Turned to liquid magma. This stone flowed like liquid, but only for a short period before resolidifying. A relic from a disastrous event undoubtedly packed tremendous force. Yet, whether this is evidence of the event which decimated the ancient civilization responsible for Siberia's ruins is yet to be fully known. It is a place that is undoubtedly highly compelling. The Dighton Rock, a 40-ton boulder in Massachusetts, USA, is a mysterious relic indeed. Not only does it not fit in with the surrounding environment, but the incredibly ancient inscriptions found upon it could unlock highly controversial truths regarding the reach of ancient civilization that would fly in the face of current academic theory. What is interesting regarding this enormous rock is that it was not only placed where it now lay by natural geologic activities many millennia ago. Drop where it lay on the shores of the Taunton River by the melting of an ancient glacier during the end of the last ice age, measuring 5 feet high, 9.5 feet wide, and 11 feet long, made of gray-brown crystal and sandstone. But number one has been able to say with certainty who first wrote upon the rock what they wanted to communicate. or why they created these mysterious markings, with it now known to have been the inspiration for over 1,000 books and articles and the basis for over 35 hypotheses. The mystery and indeed debate regarding the writings on the Dighton Rock continue to this day. And a possible motive for the mystery to remain unsolved is to protect the currently attested academic theories regarding the past of man. Thus, they could quite possibly be markings left by a past, now lost civilization, or one that has long been claimed to have been unable to have had such far-reaching settlements. The antiquity of the writings is undoubtable, as many scientific investigations have proved that they are indeed very old. Yet what is hotly debated is the origins and indeed the civilization responsible for creating them. Although predictably since 1680, when Reverend John Danforth visited the rock, a mainstream academically approved theory regarding the stone has been put forward and popularized by said institutions. However, the fact that the glyphs, more possible language etched upon the rock, has never been deciphered remains. After seeing it, he decided that the carvings on it were made by Native Americans, specifically the Wampanoag Indians, after being told the tale of a ship arriving. And a battle between the locals and mysterious newcomers were told to him from long ago in the distant past. Danforth drew the symbols visible on the top half of the petroglyph and then wrote, quote, "Is reported from the tradition of the old Indians that there came a wooden house with men of another country in it, swimming up the river Assinant, that fought the Indians and slew their Saturn." Such interpret the figures to be hieroglyphical, the first figure representing a ship without masts and mere wrack cast upon the shoals, the second representing a head of land, possibly a cape with a peninsula. End quote. Danforth's drawings were requested by the Royal Society of London in 1732 and are now preserved in the British Museum. This not only proof of their acceptance by mainstream academia, possibly due to its lack of any controversial claims, just a simple mention of newcomers and no further mention of their possible identity. Yet the fact that these inscriptions remain undecipherable makes the possibility of the newcomers being from a locality nearby illogical, and suggests that they were instead created by a group who came from a now lost or possibly concealed advanced civilization. Another hypothesis put forward by Israel Stiles in 1767, while he was the president of Yale College, claimed that the famous seafarers, the Phoenicians, had made their way all the way to North America on at least one voyage. Stiles believed that the writings were left by them to simply show that they were once there. Stiles' idea was a popular one in Europe for some time and were embraced by Antoine Cortage-Belline, a French scholar, as a possible answer to the identity of their creators. He said that the carvings on the rocks should be split into 3 sections: the past, present, and future. Some of the images he identified were an oracle and butterfly representing the future, a horse and a beaver meeting, symbolical representations of the two contents interacting in the present, and the divine figures or symbols of Minerva, telescope, and Priapus, representative of the past. Yet the mystery of who created the carvings remains to this day. Additionally, the original location of the carvings also remains a mystery. The fact that the boulder has landed where it now lay due to geological activities means it could have originated in a location far away from where it now lay. Was it made by a now lost civilization, or possibly one that academia continues to claim was not able to travel such vast distances? The mystery surrounding the Dighton Rock continues, and it is undoubtedly one that is highly compelling. There are so many astonishing, seemingly unexplainable features of the Great Pyramids of Giza. It makes one wonder why anyone would still believe the academic's tale of events, stating that they were the work of copper-wielding ancestors many thousands of years ago. And to sit across such vast area of land, with the largest Cheops covering many acres, yet is no more than a quarter of an inch from being perfectly cardinal aligned, just seems like a preposterous premise to push. In the previous video, the astonishing similarities that many years of exhausting research surrounding the unexplained ruins was explained. How MH, the channel's producer, had cataloged and mapped a number of identifiable features across many ruins, each of these identifying characteristics uniquely exclusive to one ancient civilization found upon and within unexplained ancient ruins across the entire globe. These signature similarities, and by default their many differentiations, has allowed him to establish the identity of 3 separate civilizations. Civilizations which appear to have restarted consecutively. Thus, as one would expect, branched off in vastly different directions of development, having to rebuild a modernized society from the remnants of the previous, their past existences denied by historians for many years. But I strongly believe that we will be the generation which bucks the trend, shifting a paradigm which has affected nearly everyone's lives negatively in some way. As critical mass awareness approaches, as we continue to push onwards regardless of their attempts to stifle the truth, the efforts and sacrifices made and given by individuals who perceive this deceit as a breach of all of our independent liberty as human beings is finally cracking their shields of ignorance. Predictably, these same institutions who have made life so difficult are now slowly admitting they did indeed once exist. The proof of these separate groups, which Mystery History's producer named the Cyclopean, Polygonal, and Neolithic civilizations, all had advanced capabilities, each separate from each other. Olegonal masonry, for example, yet to be fully understood by modern man in regard to its construction. The treasury of Antrius, which contains Cyclopean masonry techniques, displaying intimate knowledge of weight-bearing architecture, which the academically attested builders simply did not possess knowledge of. Underground towns and cities, the town in which the Flintstones inhabited, carved deep into some of the toughest bedrocks on Earth. Darankuyu being one of the largest, which instead of being a fortress built above the ground, placed in a strategic location atop a hill or mountain, was carved into the earth. To claim such feats were even possible by our own well-known ancient ancestors with the access to the tools they had at the time is simply a preposterous illogical stance to take. One which, if given as the answers to such sites' origins, can be seen as nothing short of the abandonment of one's senses in return for an undisturbed income flow. A ridiculous explanation for the city's origins forced upon the academic world for fear of losing their income and career, and in turn, down the throats of students who desire good grades. Stretching many kilometers into the earth, enormous rolling stones were placed at strategic passageways. And although we have no idea how they move such stones, they were clearly placed there in an attempt to stop some form of invader. One they felt as if such measures were not undertaken would have been vulnerable to. The hypergium in Malta with acoustic properties which we are yet to fully understand. The subject of our next video with some astonishing discoveries we have unearthed during further research of this underground layer. These ancient sites tunnel deep underground, rumored to have been lit by miraculously clever, naturally fed gas-fueled lighting systems, balance flames eternally lighting the inhabitation's pathways, yet as mentioned in our previous investigative film. The pyramid builders were responsible for the movement of stones, which reached well into the thousands of tons, setting them quite literally a world apart in their eventual technological capabilities. And due to our identification of no less than 3 separate phases of casing stones adorned upon the Great Pyramids, which due to the decayed and incredibly eroded condition of the stones beneath them, with casing stones also varying in age, it appears clear that they were all possible conservation efforts undertaken at different times within ancient man's past after no less than 3 cyclical developments of our civilization. These factors, Mystery History not only perceives as clear evidence supporting the hypothesis of multiple lost generations, but also clearly displays their different methods of accomplishing these tasks. Furthermore, they can clearly show all who wish to study them, whether attempting to amass, as the channel has, a large privately held collection of proofs, evidences, and part studies that were hidden all over Earth regardless of one's reasoning. I implore all to merely study the casing stones of Giza's pyramids, for more than enough proof of many lost civilizations and the pyramids and their past builders' tremendous age. Additionally, we want to make it clear to all that we encourage discourse. The organically grown nature of the channel's demographic is its most important characteristic. We do not reject other people's disagreements to anything presented or that is claimed on occasion, as long as they are willing to attempt constructive discourse in the pursuit of that which is the ultimate goal, the truth. My most recent video concerning the third ancient civilization I have independently identified as once living here upon our planet, which practiced lost and as such inexplicable building techniques, was targeted, successfully taken down under the guise of a copyright strike by a particular individual claiming copyright ownership to all its content. This regardless of the fact that it contained many different areas of research, most specifically my own, even though we are now demonetized, and thus the infringement goalposts as it were by default widen, even if we did share a portion of this certain individual's images, due to no monetization, we would feel that it would merely fall under copyright protection for purposes of commentary and education. And even though we have added my own discoveries to this specific site, this individual devoted several hours, nearly a day's worth of venomous effort, in fact, in targeting not only the video but every comment made upon it with a tailored response to each individual. also targeting my email and also spamming my Facebook page, sending several threatening emails declaring that they were intent on getting their small following to target my channel also. Although this is clear harassment, it has also made their mask slip, as it were, as the attitude of academia towards my content and their resentment of such are clearly aligned with this individual's vitriol. I will not mention this individual's name, firstly because I am now embroiled in a copyright dispute with them, but also that if this is a legitimate claim by said individual, it is clear that they are merely a glory hunter. Believing they are the sole owner of a site I believe to be more than likely over 50,000 years old. In contrast to this individual, I've recently received an email from an independent researcher by the name of Jock Doubleday, who has spent 23 months investigating the Bosnian Pyramid Complex, 16 months of which spent as an official videographer for the Archaeological Park Foundation. He not only sent me all of his discoveries, but stated that I was free to share all of which with the world. This attempt to share such exhaustive research with us, in an attempt to expand all of our understandings of the past in comparison to what we encountered regarding the attack by this individual for sharing a few images who has seemingly claimed ownership to a specific Neolithic site, turning away several individuals such as Graham Hancock in an attempt to be solely named as the owner of said research has so far successfully prevented its exposure to the world, possibly in an attempt to merely gain glory for the ruin's discovery, but also has limited the exposure of a ruin possibly built over 50,000 years ago. I will leave it up to you to come to your own conclusion as to who has the right attitude towards unraveling the history of our planet, and I will also be covering Jock's astonishing discovery shortly. Regardless of this organized attack, I will be continuing on the same vein of exploratory subject matter in this video, not only to annoy said individual, but academia as a whole. The main problem I feel these academics have with my work and why they successfully had me demonetized are the facts I present along with the efficiency of the attached reinforcing research. My intimate knowledge of what our well-studied academically permitted ancestors' past capabilities were, but crucially how they have no answers regarding any of the features or contradict I present. Having got that out of the way, let us continue. Who were the Neoliths? In previous videos, thanks to several signature building techniques, along with the differentiations in these found among ancient ruins all over the world, I have identified and logically separated different lost civilizations' work. Additionally, these signatures have allowed the vacation of who built what, where, and when, naming these civilizations ourselves as the Polygonal and the Cyclopean civilizations, with Italy allowing me to identify that the Cyclopeans predated the Polygonals. Yet, there was another civilization also practicing masonry techniques which utilized the lifting and placement of stones many tons in weight, which we know in modern-day history as the Neoliths. Yet, who were these enigmatic people? It should be clear to all who have watched our previous content that the intimate knowledge they had of astronomical precisions along with their astonishing capabilities of solar alignments in addition to the size of the stones they used in their building of these structures demonstrates that they were far from that of a primitive people. The evidence of their knowledge with building methods still not deciphered is clearly undeniable evidence that they were far more advanced than academics claim. And although their ruins may now appear primitive, this may, in all possibility, be due to their tremendous age. These undeniabilities, along with our in-depth study of their intentions, which are better understood and deciphered as every day goes by, is the main reason why I am disliked by an academia who not only have no answers to the evidence I present but are also by default systematically being humiliated. My accusation is that mainstream archaeology, along with academic institutes, particularly those teaching our children, attest to particular groups being responsible for such ruins. Yet we accuse them of fallacy, and with good reasoning, not only due to the civilizations they are teaching children who are responsible or simply incapable. But when these young, free-thinking adults are confronted with such tales after watching my content, are armed with information which not only proves that such claims are lies, but when they challenge their teachers and academics alike, with the information provided on my channel, subsequently received the response I told them they would, which is a response absent of any logical understanding, revealing that they are indeed purveyors of fallacies, merely following orders placed in books, continuing an illogical delusion, which conceals the truth. It is not only opening their minds to the fact that my research be accurate, but each individual who is exposed to these truths systematically weakens academia's influence as a whole, a power which they once held over all of our minds, snapping one chain at a time. As such, freeing the minds of the inquisitive to not only the reality of our world and the vast unknowns that these institutes are seemingly attempting to hide, but creating allies in the pursuit of these truths. How did a group placed thousands of years back within history lift such stones atop one another? How did they quarry them, and somehow carry them many miles to their final resting places? Not only that, but to align most of these sites from ground level with such precision to processions of astronomical bodies. Furthermore, I personally believe that their obsession with the sun was for good reason, and that the cyclical nature of it, which I was attacked for positing as the causation of the demise of Atlantis within my Atlanta video, may have quite possibly been the cause for this obsession, possibly created to observe its activities after experiencing a cataclysm. Is it mere coincidence that it could be seen as the Son of God, the light-bringer, that hell is often represented as an inferno? But I digress. The point is, the Neoliths were undoubtedly far more advanced and had far more knowledge than academia is willing to admit. Yet, regardless, due to ours and others' in-depth research, this is now undeniable.